Good evening, everyone. This is a Let's Talk Justice version of the Suzette Speaks show. In these shows, I deal with political topics and heavier legally related topics. And tonight, as you can see on your screen, the topic number one that we're going to be covering, actually, we might do it in reverse order, is the shooting of Mr. Jayland Walker. It was a horrific scene. Many of you guys have seen the headlines in the news. A young man in Akron, Ohio, after a police chase and police stop, received 60 shots. And we're going to discuss this topic with an expert in the field. He is a former police officer and a YouTuber who has a show about crimes and how officers relate to people and what we can do to relate better to them. The other topic that we're going to cover today is one that really hit heavy for me. I'm going to discuss the mental state, seemingly, of the suspect in the Highlands Park, Illinois mass shooting. I saw so much information online about some of his artwork, some of his Discord posts, some of his rap videos that made me want to investigate a little bit more the psychology of young people that become mass shooters. So we have not seen. What should I say? We rarely get to talk about the mental state, but we have most certainly seen this similar type of profile of an individual in the age range 21, white male, hanging around in online spaces that are some would definitely characterize as unhealthy. And we're going to talk a little bit more about his mental state. I'm calling this show American Psycho. And I want to talk about both of these tragic and horrific shootings, and we're going to again do some digging. So if you are sensitive to those type of topics, I'm warning you, we are not going to play video here. I'm going to only use still shots, and I'm going to start by welcoming everybody in the chat. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm Suzette Speaks. Hit the like button. This is my YouTube channel. I want to welcome you if this is the first time watching, and if you're watching on Facebook, what's up? Hit the like button, show some love. Us YouTubers love when you comment, when you share, of course, and when you like. So that's what I'll ask first and foremost. If you support elevated content with deeper discussions, and again, this is a legal discussion tonight, as well as mental health and policing. And we're going to have, like I say, a police expert. I'm going to have, thankfully, he said yes. This was a little bit last minute, but I just came straight from doing a political debate forum. Shout out to the ladies of South Florida's, AKA Delta Sigma Theta chapters up in Broward County for having me moderate. But I said, you know what? This is such a heavy topic that I really want to make sure it's covered because it deserves coverage. So again, hit the like button, come through. Topic for tonight is two very... The word heinous doesn't really seem to me to do enough. Hit the like button. I'm here again with my special guest, real Nathan Daley. Again, he is a law enforcement, I think he calls himself interpreter, and he's really great at breaking down scenarios that occur in the public square where we see these big headlines and all of this, but we need a law enforcement expert to break down the mindset of what the training tells law enforcement officers to do and what the behavior of the person, unfortunately here, the victim, tells them. And so we're going to discuss this in a very methodical way. I'm going to start with Mr. Crimo, as you guys may have heard. And if you haven't been watching the news, this is the face of the American Psycho. That's what I'm going to call him. I'm going to look at some of his writings, his online persona. There are so many parts about his life. Now he's been charged with taking the lives of 6 individuals at a July 4th parade in Highlands Park in Illinois. It is a affluent suburb of Chicago, upper middle class folks having a lovely park experience, really, parade experience. And here comes this young man, as you can see there, while he has every right to post what he wants to post and be, seen or interpreted by the public as he wishes, there are various signs when we talk about these red flag laws that he posed that I think were ignored, and we're going to explore them a little bit more. So, would you please hit the like button so I can bring up my guest and say hello to me in the chat, please, so we can go ahead and roll right into our discussion tonight. Again, if you are sensitive to some of these topics, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that this might not be the show for you. That's okay. And you can rewatch if your team replay, hit the like button also. Come through, let us know what you think, leave a comment at the end of the show. Again, we're going to be discussing both this gentleman as well as justice for Jayland Walker. This was the young man that was gunned down in a police shooting, shot 60 times while running away from officers after a police chase and a traffic stop. This is again a more complex, a nuanced story. I wanted to bring an expert today, so I have some help, and I'm glad he said yes. This is our special guest. Welcome, Real Nathan Daley. His channel is in the description, so please go support content creators like us who are trying to bring you real information, bring you real food for thought, go into some more of the difficult subject matters, again, that sometimes are less popular. But again, these are two major headlines. So I could not let the day pass without getting into the specifics of these cases. I want you guys to hit the like button again so I can bring my guests up. I'm grateful for each and every one of you watching. It means so much to us YouTubers to see you in the chat. I'm going to give a quick disclaimer, even though I am an attorney. And although Nathan is a former police officer in Atlanta, Georgia, we are not giving any direct legal advice. Please know that YouTube is not the place for that. If you do have a legal issue, or if you would like legal analysis of your specific circumstances, you must call an attorney directly. So you can, if you're in Florida, you can call me. If I practice that area of law, I would be happy to help. And if you need a criminal attorney, I don't do criminal. I can recommend someone for you, but please know that nothing here is to be construed as any type of legal advice. This is not legal advice. This is for informational and educational purposes only. So please use your discretion and speak to an attorney one-on-one if you do have a legal issue. But we're going to do some work tonight. Thank you guys for coming in. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you for being busy. This again is the SuzetteSpeaks show. We're going to start with the first story. Again, the Highlands Park suspect, Robert Crimo the third. Let me let my intention be clear. I am not discussing this man to try to elevate him and give him the crazy notoriety that he probably desires. But I do want to use him as a legal case study and as a societal case study. When we talk about the mental health of young people coming out of the pandemic, coming out of places where sometimes parents and loved ones don't seem, y'all hit the like button, don't seem to recognize as unhealthy, as sometimes really indicative of pain, of crying out, of saying, I need help, I need somebody to love me, pay attention to me. But we're not going to excuse also behaviors that are quite heinous, downright evil, some might characterize it as. And we're going to call a spade a spade. This is the SuzetteSpeaks show. Hey, Ernest, good to see you. Nice to have you. We need to talk. Nathan himself is in the chat. Y'all follow him. Go again. Check out his channel. Sunbreeze in the building. Systemus RM. I see you. Thank you for my moderators. Thank you for everybody in the chat. Y'all hit the like button so I can bring up my guests. Again, you can follow me also and Mr. Real Nathan Daley on Instagram. Appreciate everyone who is here. Again, this is a heavier topic. Again, I know it's hard, guys, to digest some of the craziness that we've been seeing in our world. Hey, Sir Hell Speaks. But I do think in both these cases, they deserve some time and some discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up my special guest to introduce himself. I'm going to still read all of your comments in the chat. I'm glad you're here. And welcome to, again, I guess, to the SuzetteSpeaks show. None other than Officer Nathan, or Real. Let's go. Damn. Nathan Daley. Good evening.
Over here acting up in the back.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Suzette. It's always a pleasure to be on your channel. We always have a good time. Shout out to everybody in the chat.
Thank you again, Nathan. Of course, I'm grateful, like I said, that you said yes. I've seen you cover, especially the Jayland Walker shooting, and really extensively. We're not going to go as deep as he went on his channel. So y'all go over to his channel and see him do some work in his analysis of what happened. But I wanted him to lend some of that expertise to us here tonight over here on the Suzette Speaks show to help us understand better what we're watching and what we're seeing in the headlines. So before we get into it, please introduce yourself and welcome again.
Yes. What's going on, everybody? This is Nathan Daley from the Real Nathan Daley channel. As you guys know, for those who don't know, I'm a 13-year law enforcement veteran, recently retired. I'm here on YouTube to provide insight from a lot of difficult topics regarding law enforcement, especially as it relates to the Black community. So I provide a lot of interesting perspectives, a different perspective, unbiased and raw, straight to the point, with a little bit of empathy on top. So I really appreciate the support, you guys. Please go out and check out the channel. I do break down body camera footage as well, and then provide explanation as it relates to police policy and procedure. And I also talk about police reform and just kind of answer whatever questions you guys have that you won't normally get from law enforcement, unfortunately. Here to really change the dynamic. So again, thank you, Suzette, for having me. And this is definitely a very, very, very tough case to look at, both of them, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I told you when we just, briefly chatted earlier, we both had kind of been following the same cases. And when I find them interesting, I know that my viewers and others will find these cases very interesting. So, tell us first and foremost what you thought about let's start with the Highlands Park shooting. Can you just lay out the facts as far as I've given a brief overview of what happened so that people will know in general what took place?
Yeah, so on 4th of July, in the morning time, there was a parade in Highland Park. The gentleman here, Crimo, the suspect slash offender in this case, he stood on top of a roof of a building and he opened fired on the parade. He initially was 6 dead and over 20 injured. Now it's 7 dead because someone who was in the hospital passed away. There was 1 child and the rest were adults. And then the 21, I think 21 or 22 are actually injured behind this. So based on the investigation, what ended up happening was they found out that he had been planning this for quite some time. When after the shooting took place, of course, it created a lot of chaos. He then left his rifle at the scene of the crime. People witnessed him on top of the roof shooting. That's how they knew where to actually go and begin their investigation. He actually concealed his identity as a woman. He put makeup to cover his tattoos. He wore a wig, and he blended himself into the crowd. He got into a vehicle. It's a silver sedan, like hatchback, and he fled the scene. It took approximately 8 hours for him to be arrested, but the investigation with law enforcement and the FBI and ATF, they jumped in right away and started working on it. They were able to identify him through the rifle. It's a technique that the ATF uses where they have a very powerful system where they can trace firearms. And for those who are not familiar, the ATF is Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to the federal agency. And so they're able to identify who purchased that weapon through the tracing system. They identified him. He had just recently bought that rifle, probably like in December, I believe. And so it didn't take long before they started pulling surveillance cameras, and then they were able to identify a person who looks obviously as him, but then dressed up as a woman. How he was apprehended. After the news started releasing information about the suspect's vehicle and how he looks, a citizen actually spotted the vehicle driving. They called, and next you know, law enforcement swooped down on him, and they conducted a traffic stop. They were heavily armed, as you can imagine, and they were able to get him in custody without incident.
This is a very critical kind of timeline. Thank you, Real Nathan Daley. It was something that I Uh, Two saw that there were so many different parts of it, and I think Nathan, I think you might be frozen. Let me give you a second, I think, to come back, but it happens. Miss Creative says Sue got her corporate voice on. No, I'm. This is a serious matter, both of these. So I want to treat them with the seriousness and the gravity that they deserve. And I want to make sure we pay attention, right? Because there are some indications here when it comes to some of the laws and things that people are struggling to pass or fighting for that probably would address some of what we saw, specifically with Mr. Crimo. Mr. Crimo was a person that had also, and I'll add this as well, had some run ins with law enforcement where his family had called police back in 2019 to indicate to them that they were afraid of him, that he had shown some kind of, mental breakdown, if you will. Some would say like a mental break. And he was threatening his family. He was threatening them with knives. At the time, he was too young to own a weapon, a gun of any sort. And the family, in calling the police, actually ended up getting a mental health intervention instead of a criminal intervention. So that is one part of the story that I really want to highlight. Thank you for coming through and coming and checking out the Suzette Speaks show. So tonight, as I said, we are going to be covering something that is very sensitive to many of us because these type of shooting incidences are happening much more often. But I really wanted to drill down on what the similarities are within this profile of a shooter. Mr. Crimo may be, this one individual, now suspect, now arrested, now charged with, I think it's the seventh murder. I think it might be seven, at least 6 first-degree charges. Thank you, Maggie, the substitute teacher says hit the like button. However, his mental state, based on, again, we look at facts as attorneys, his mental state based on his rap career. That's another part of what I wanted to bring up about him. He was an inspiring rapper, and he called himself Awoke the Rapper, and also belonged to somewhat of a dystopian, I gotta be very careful how I characterize this, fringe, hit the like button, y'all, fringe group of people who look through a very the word I want to use is far from reality version of the world. And I want, when Officer Nathan Daley comes back, for him to also address some of this as evidenced by this young man's post, his writings, the way he presented himself. He was tatted from top to bottom. And as Officer Nathan Daley pointed out, in his escape, that goes to mindset, in his escape from the rooftop where he stood with this automatic rifle, he left that rooftop on the right-hand side there, dressed as a woman with his tattoos covered. He is a heavily tattooed man, 21 years old, and he knew, that's what I look at as an attorney, the mens rea, the legal term for the mental state of the person, by the behavior that they're offering. So he knew in order to get from the top of that building into the crowd and kind of masquerade himself as someone who was part of just the parade and was also trying to escape. That's how he made his escape. He was dressed up in women's clothing. If you look, the picture on the right, I'm going to drop myself to the smaller side of the screen, but the picture on the right, he was dressed as a woman. His tattoos were covered, some alleged by makeup as well. So on his face, you see on the left-hand side, he had tattoos on his face, but on the right-hand side, you can't see him. You can't see them. So he also did some thinking as to what he would do. And police have also, since his arrest, say that he contemplated a second shooting on the same day. So the mindset of a young man who is 21, family, I'm going to get into his father. His father ran for office where they're from. I'm going to bring up a picture just because he is a public figure. He ran for office. And his uncle, who he lived with, said he had no clue, no chance of understanding that this is what the mindset of this young man was. Here he goes. Here we go. Real Nathan Daley is back, y'all. Hit the like button as we come through. As I said, we got two stories to cover tonight. Won't be before you long, but wanted to spend some time shining a light on some of the patterns we're seeing in our culture and in our country. So definitely talking about the first in the same week information that came out about Mr. Robert Crimo III has made, headlines, and we wanted to analyze them a little bit more. And just a little bit, we're also going to talk about the Akron shooting of Mr. Jayland Walker and what happened in that scenario. So as we go forward, hit the like button. I'm going to turn it back over to you. We're just revisiting some of the facts as you mentioned it, that he left in women's clothing. Let's talk about the gun purchase. I was very perturbed to hear that his father, hit the like button, y'all, had purchased the gun for him.
Mhm.
So let's go down that road, if you will, in terms of why it took his dad to purchase it for him and what it led to, honestly.
Yeah, I believe if I'm not mistaken, Chicago, well, not Chicago, Illinois has a very interesting law where if you're underage, you can get a parent to basically, in so many ways, co-sign for you for a gun. And it's called a what is it called? It's a something type of card. I can't remember the name of it.
Okay.
We
Like a
don't do that.
provisional, yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny name. I can't. A Foyd card. A
Hmm.
Foyd card is what it's called. This is the same card that Jesus Christ, did it go off again? My
There you go. The internet don't want you to be great. Continue to
Man,
say
that's what
boy.
it is. We got some haters. Yeah. So the Foyd card. If it goes out again, I'm gonna call in on the phone and then shoot it
Okay,
there.
no
But
problem.
so the Foyd card is basically like it's almost like you could say it's a permit to get a gun license for a rifle, but you have to have a cosigner, a parent, right? A parent, someone of age, has to cosign for you. I'm not too particular with all the details regarding it, but it was the same type of card that was used in the purchase of the firearm involving the case with the shooter from
Oh, Kyle
Kyle
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse. That's right.
Yeah.
He had a
Wow.
Foyd card. So that's where a lot of the information got twisted when people were saying, hey, he wasn't old enough to buy a rifle, blah, blah, blah. Well, the laws in the state that he lives in, which is, Illinois, he got it in Illinois. So that's what it was. That's how he was able to get the rifle.
So he
Um,
wasn't old enough to buy it on his own,
I don't believe
but
so.
through this provision, same thing. We remember Kyle Rittenhouse,
Right.
who shot people during, I think that
So
was it the
long.
Ferguson?
Ferguson,
During
yes.
the Ferguson
Right.
uprising,
Yep.
the young man who said he was being chased and fell and turned around and
Right.
killed several people and got off.
Yes,
So
he
it's the
did.
same provisional card where a
Correct.
younger than eligible person can have a parent sign and get a firearm such as a semi-automatic. Yeah, semi-automatic. I saw some headlines. Y'all hit the like button as you come in. Show some love for the stream. I'm here with real Nathan Daley doing some analysis of these two very scary stories that we saw come out. So this is a headline from the New York Post: Father of Highland Park shooter. Let me make us a little bit smaller. Bring that forward. Yeah, Robert Crimo has blood on his hands too. That's what we're talking about. That it seems as if his dad was legally allowed to bring him or to get him a rifle, to sign for some high powered automatic rifle for him. So there's questions around this. This one on the right says, this is from Colors of India. This is an Indian newspaper that
Mhm.
carried our news, is global when it comes to mass shootings. Highland Park massacre suspect Robert Crimo, 22, is a rapper called Awake with 16,000 listeners on Spotify, which is
Mhm.
another thing that I thought, wow, he actually had like listeners like
Yeah.
to his music. Can we speak a little bit about, and again, we can keep it generally to what has been already, because we're doing this literally the week he got arrested, guys. So information may come out that changes. We are doing like an initial reaction based on this just happening this week. So, what have you read, Nathan, about his mental state when it comes to like his posts and some of the artwork and other trails he's left as far as on
Yeah.
his social media?
Well, I think this is the problem because this is a very dangerous area to kind of play around in. People don't want these things to happen, which I agree 100%. This is it's extremely tragic. It is psychotic, right? It's unhealthy. We can all agree on this. This is not the behavior that we want people to participate in. A lot of people lost their lives tragically. The problem is people are trying to understand and catch signs so they can prevent this from happening. I'm here to tell people you'll never catch the sign. You'll never be able to prevent this from happening. This is equivalent to a natural disaster. You have no control over it. This is a very slippery slope. How do you profile a psychopath, right? The FBI does it. They have ways to do it, but they do it after the fact. They don't do it beforehand. You can't assume that you can identify a killer before they kill. It's very, very hard to do it, and we don't have the skills, nor do we have the tools to measure a person's mind and their heart before they commit a crime. Right? This reminds me of the movie A Minority Report, right? And again, why do I say that? Because he exhibits behavior that a lot of people in this country exhibit, right? It's nothing out of the norm in this country. Why? Because we've accepted so much. We have created a practice and a culture in this country where this type of behavior is okay, right? It's okay. You don't know a killer until they kill you. That's the reality. And that's what makes it dangerous. Everybody has the potential to be one of him. Somebody is raising another one of this one, right? In their household as we speak. And you don't know. You don't know. What are the signs? We can think there are signs, but there are laws and constitutional rights that protect the person. So even if you think you might have someone, we just can't go in there and start snatching people up. Even if you watch someone, there's only so much you can do before they decide to commit to an act of terror against their own people, right? Against their own citizen. What did he show? He had pictures of him being shot and killed by the police, allegedly, if that's supposed to be him depicted in the photos, right? His music videos were very dark, very kind of twisted, very questionable. But again, I can show you thousands of other white, black, Asian, Hispanic who make the same type of videos. Again, this is a allowed practice in this country. There's no way to identify, right? There's no way. One would argue that again, at the end of the day, this is he could just be expressing himself. Who would ever thought he would try to express this out in real life, right? Who would ever no one would know that. And I think that's what makes this thing a very difficult situation is because are we going to start rounding up everybody who makes artistic material that's very dark and sadistic, twisted, evil, suggestive, evil behavior? I mean, okay, cool, but then how do we apply that to a person's constitutional rights? Right? You got freedom of speech that gets caught up in there. You got people's Fourth Amendment rights that gets caught in there. How do you go about how do you go about really addressing those things because everybody has a right to express themselves. And so this becomes very tricky. This is why police can know about these things yet still can't do anything. Because it's how do you measure it? How do you know who's for real and who's for play? How do you know the difference between entertainment and those who are looking to carry it out? This is the same argument they're making right now within rap culture and hip hop culture in reference to men and women who are making music about the crimes that they're committing. On one end, they're saying this is art. This is art. And other people are saying, yeah, but you're imitating art in real life. Therefore, you've crossed over a threshold where your First Amendment is not protected. So this is where we are, right? This is actively where we are right now. We have a group of gang members, allegedly, who have been arrested with the RICO Act for this very same thing. They use their music videos as evidence to support and to correlate the crimes that they committed in real life. And they have been arrested for crimes that they have committed and essentially confessed to
In the
lyrically
lyrics.
in the
Yes.
lyrics. And so what we're seeing now with Crimo is that he has made a lot of suggestive material in his art form that would suggest that he would do something like this, but he has not done it yet. And the law is very reactive. It's not proactive, it's reactive. We act after the fact. And so, with that being the case, how do you then, how do you prevent it? How do you prevent it? The parents are saying that there were no signs. They had no signs. But the police were called out to his house last year in December,
Hmm.
on a family violence, right? There was some type of family violence domestic complaint, and allegedly, he threatened to
Kill a
kill
bunch
his
of
whole
people.
family.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so the police showed up. He had a bunch of knives and things like that. They confiscated those things and then gave it back. But again, the family is denying that. So we don't really know, right? We don't really know the truth. But allegedly, he was never arrested for that. And
They
that is,
treated it as a mental health intervention as opposed, y'all support the stream, as a mental health
hmm,
intervention as opposed to, which again, many
right.
will argue, how come when it comes to our white brothers and sisters in America, they get the benefit of the doubt as far as having a mental issue? And
Hmm,
again, no police action was taken. Therefore, there was really no police record for someone to see when it came to a background check. And that was one of the parts of, I was just like, well, we got this red flag law. Everybody wants red flag laws. I'll hit the like button. Um, but again, it depends on the decisions of the officers who show up at your house
hmm,
and who they perceive you to be and how big of a threat they perceive you to be as to whether you actually get documentation that's entered into the system so that if a purchase is going to be made thereafter, then you would have some kind of record. We want to welcome everybody watching. See, some new people have joined. Hit the like button. This is Suzette Speaks along with real Nathan Daley. We're going to wrap up with this side of what we've seen as far as in our last week, not even of
right.
legal and police related hot topics and stories. I want to see what the comments are saying. You guys can leave a comment. We might drop the link in a little bit just so you guys can give your feedback on why this slipped through the cracks. This is this young man's mugshot. You can see him there. Again, I didn't even want to bring up some of the paintings and stuff because I do not want to unintentionally give it this kind of like um, what sordid, notoriety, which is what a lot of them also crave at the end of the day. But it is, if you want to look up on your own, some of his drawings and things within some of these kind of darker corners of the web. When, again, as Nathan has pointed out, when it becomes acceptable to be in these spaces and
Right.
calling it free speech, when
Correct.
people's minds are starting to kind of warp between, pretend world where I kill people in pretend world and then reality world, how do you stop that? How do you predict that? What is that line that is crossed that lets officers or the public say, something is wrong. He went from, withdrawing from, real life, his family and society, to becoming far more active on some of these internet based, like dystopian chat rooms and things like this. So it was, again, some would look at this guy and say, wow, there was sign after sign. But
Right.
again, as Officer Real Nathan Daley is saying, everything is clear. Hindsight is 2020, and now we're looking at it like, why didn't anybody do anything?
Correct.
I also do though. The family bothers me. The uncle, something is wrong when people can go in and out your house. I mean, really, they're living almost like a parallel lives, and people are good at hiding things. People are good at kids are good at
Mhm.
keeping things from the people that they live with. So I don't necessarily blame them, but I really want to kind of um, address why it's important that family members, especially of young people now, when they're saying like 1 out of 5 has some kind of mental health struggle, we really need to like be more open, be more attentive, be more listening and skillful at getting mental health intervention and whatnot. And not that I'm saying that's what needed to be here and would have cured everything, but it's definitely a part of his story, let's say. So I really wanted to highlight this for that reason. But yeah, some of the stuff that he was posting was quite disturbing. Again, I'm not going to give it any type of uh,
Right.
glamorization or here, but I do want to, bring that to your attention that if you see your kids or people that you know and are in your circles doing some of this stuff, take note of it. Maybe ask the parent, ask the loved one to address it. And maybe that will also help in our discussions. I'm going to read a few comments from the chat, and then I'm going to let Real Nathan Daley kind of make his final comments on this story. And then we're going to pivot to a heartbreaking story that I don't know. I told him, I was like, I was not excited that we were going to talk about it. I'm not going to
Tough
lie
one.
because there's so much to it. And I thank you, Big Ben. Kyle Rittenhouse was actually Kenosha. Sorry,
I'm
correct the
sorry.
record. I
Yeah.
said it. Thank you for correcting me. Kenosha, Wisconsin, not Ferguson, Missouri. Thank you very much, Big Ben. Yes, anyone can do this, says Ezra, who will be my guest next week. Thank you, Ezra, the insurance broker. I appreciate you for being here. Oh, to Chef, nice to see you. YSL, I think was that what you were referring to, is
Yep.
in jail for their lyrics. Good evening, Ebony. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for being, in the chat with us. Sunbreeze adds mental illness is a real thing. They need so much attention and intervention, I would add. They are
Yep.
human beings just like us, absolutely. With the right treatment and the right intervention, we can prevent some of this. But it is, yes, a criminal act as such as of today. So we'll see if he produces any defenses as far as his mental health. I'm interested to see if that's where his counsel, his lawyers will take this. The government is quick to figure out blacks, but not, okay, your opinion. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I hear you. Yes, it was 2019. I was going to correct Officer Nathan Daly too.
Thank
It
you.
wasn't last year when he
Thank
had his issues with his family. It was actually 2019. Thank you, Kay Freeman, keeping us honest, keeping us open, keeping us on point over here. Stacy, and nice to have you. Says, according to the Patriotic Act, doesn't it allow for warrantless searches or surveillance by the state? I'm not going to comment on that.
the
Patriot
pa-
Act,
the
maybe
page.
Patriot
Yeah.
Act. Yeah,
Yeah. It so it was created for domestic terrorists and
yes.
terrorism as well. But I don't know all the details,
I
but
don't
it
know if it
does
would
give
apply
more
to
leeway.
this.
Yeah,
Yes.
it started after the after 9/11, and so if I'm not mistaken, but
I think it's for like foreign terrorists and things like this, or
any
suspected terrorists and things like this.
right.
So yeah, I can't comment on that. Sorry about that. But wrapping up this particular story, I'm going to read a few more comments and then go into Mr. Jayland Walker's story. Yes, Kay Freeman says his father has some power in the community. Father is a business owner and ran for mayor. That also was quite surprising to many. That again, his father was not disconnected and kind of, on the fringes of society. His father also was a civic-minded person, right? If you
Yeah.
run for an office like mayor, you pay attention to things. You are involved in things, but again, it left many wondering. So, what happened to your son? Like, it
Well,
was really weird.
let me address that too, because I mean we just saw just a couple days we got a senator twerking on top of her head.
Oh Jesus, I'm covering that Saturday. Y'all get ready for
so
Saturday's show. But go ahead, go ahead.
so in reference to that though, we can't control our family members. You know what I mean? I think people are looking at it from the wrong lens, and we're saying that okay, well, look at who his dad was. How does kid turn out that way? Well, we have a lot of prominent figures who have people in their family who don't turn out or who aren't law-abiding citizens. So I think it's kind of unfair assessment. People like to blame the family, the parents. In certain cases, yeah, the family can be looked at, but you guys, I'm telling you from experience, sometimes parents have no clue as to who their children are, who the family members are. Sometimes they live a double life, and sometimes the parents aren't really active. Right? I've seen that on in white communities and black communities. I've seen it in all communities. Sometimes there's just a disconnect. Not every household is created equal, and unfortunately, if you don't pay attention, if you don't see the signs or things that are disturbing, and you don't get that person or individual any help, they do come out here and a lot of times create problems that end up in the hands of the police and sometimes end up losing their life by a police officer. I had to deal with a lot of mental health cases, and just throughout my career and also in my community, in the black community. And you guys, it's difficult, and a lot of times the family members, don't even really kind of cast that family member aside. That's why we have so many mental health people on the streets and are homeless and things of that nature. They're very, very difficult to manage, to help, to assist, because they also have rights regardless of the capacity of their mental health. So it's a very difficult problem, and it seems like no one has the right answer to actually fix it.
Sir, you've said so much there. We're going to now have to pivot to the next unfortunate incidents. Thank you guys for your comments. I appreciate y'all in the chat. Again, we were talking about different hot topics, news stories that had to do with law enforcement and legal matters. And the second, I'm definitely glad you are the person I'm sitting next to right now, on the screen at least, so that we can address this very, very traumatizing uh, uh, incident. Incident almost minimizes it. It needs to be like, I want you to characterize it because you've seen it through the lens of a law enforcement officer. I'm also just a person, an American citizen who just looks around and just wonders, where's the humanity for others? Of course, this is a shooting that rattled many, happened in Akron, Ohio. I'm going to ask Officer Nathan Daley to kind of describe what happened in the Jayland Walker case.
Mm-hmm. You want me to walk you through?
Yes, please.
From the beginning?
Yes, please.
So you guys, this incident happened. It started off from a traffic stop, and the Akron, Ohio Police Department were trying to pull over Jayland as he was driving. He was in a silver vehicle, silver sedan, and they were stopping him for a traffic violation. They never said what the violation was, and then also an equipment violation. As they attempted to pull him over, he refused to stop the car and obey the emergency lights, right? He never stopped. So he then continues on. He starts to lead them on a high-speed chase. He speeds up. They continue to follow after him. During that time, the officers are alleging, or the officer who was directly behind him, alleged that he fired a shot from out of the driver's side door towards the police vehicle. I've watched over 14 body camera footage in reference to this case, and like Suzette said, I broke it down on my channel, and the videos, of course, are graphic. So if you guys, if you do want to see that, you can check out the video I did on Jayland. I break down the different videos and I explain in detail what happened. So what did I observe from the evidence that they presented from the police? The police department presented the following evidence. They actually have body camera footage of the officer. You can hear a sound that is consistent with the gunshot from outside of the police vehicle. Then the officer radios and says, "Hey, I've just been shot at. He shot from outside the driver's side window in my direction." You hear the officer make that statement on the radio. They also then have a traffic camera recording the high-speed chase, and you actually see what they are saying is a muzzle flash from the gun that was captured on a traffic camera on the interstate. Now, when the officer made that statement, now you have pretty much probably the entire police department shift that night that are now zeroing in on this chase, going after Jayland. For now, not only was it just the traffic violation and equipment violation, now in so many ways you have attempted or aggravated assault on a police officer for shooting at the officer. At this point in time, that is the mindset of the officers who are showing up to intervene and try to mitigate the threat at the time, which is Jayland Walker. So they're pursuing him. Multiple police cars are present. I don't know how many cars are there, but I do know there were 13 police officers on the scene during the time of the shooting. It seems like to me that the officers are riding 2 per vehicle. That's why so many officers were on the scene. That was a question that was asked of me as well. If you're riding 2 per car, and then you have about 6 police cars, that seems like the entire shift. That would make sense that you'd have that many physical officers on the scene. As they get him slowed down. He's slowing his vehicle down. He's in the driver's seat. He tries to get out of the driver's side. door. The police are already present. They're pointing guns at him. They're yelling at him, telling him to get out the car, get out the car. He then crawls across to the passenger side of the seat. He gets out of the passenger side of the car, and then he takes off running. When he gets out of the vehicle, you guys, he is actually wearing a black ski mask. Um, so of course, the officers are looking at all of this information in real time. We know that he's armed because an officer advised us that he shot at him. So they're responding with that mentality. As they are chasing him, he's wearing a ski mask on. It is about 12:30, 12:36 in the morning. The officers attempt to tase him on two body cams. It appears that they tried to tase him twice, and it was ineffective. A lot of people don't realize the taser has to be effective. Both prongs have to touch the body of the person, and it has to be in a certain type of spread from the top torso and the bottom torso of the body for it to be effective. So it's very hard to hit someone who is running. So the taser was ineffective. They run into it looks like a business parking lot. He is surrounded by, again, 10 to 13 officers because some officers were running in late into the scene. What the police department is saying happened. The officer who first shot at Jayland, this is what they are saying. They are saying that Jayland turned his body in an aggressive manner towards one of the officers and took a shooting stance. And when he made that turn, when he turned his body in that way, it appeared as if he was manifesting a gun from his hand movements. And because of that's the reason why they actually shot at him. The issue is, in this case, Jayland did not have the gun on his person. The gun was actually left in the vehicle. The officers, of course, at the time did not know that. This is the gun. That's a Glock. A lot of people were saying that, hey, that gun looks staged. Looks like it was planted
Yeah,
there.
who would jump out the car and it's laying directly in the middle of the seat like that? Come
Right.
on, bro.
Hold on. Well, this is the thing. This is what's crazy about it. Because two things. We don't know, we're going to speculate, but I'm going to inform people on how police procedures work. It is part of our procedure and policy for us to disarm the weapon, take photos of the weapon as evidence. That's a fact. This looks like a photograph of evidence that an officer took at the scene. It does not look like where the gun was unless he actually disarmed the weapon. He put it there himself. We don't know. There has not been any clarification, which is unfortunate. That has not been clarified. But this is not uncommon for officers to do. Once we locate the weapon, we have to, by policy, we disarm it. We take photos of it. There's a wedding ring that's there as well next to the gun. For those who don't know, his soon-to-be wife was killed recently in a car accident. Some are suggesting that based on his behavior and things of that nature, that this could possibly be suicide by cop, which I wouldn't be surprised either as one possible theory, because nothing made sense in regards to his behavior and interaction with the police. This was not the first time he fled from the police as well. And so recently, and I believe they haven't said specifically, but I think it was only within a few days. So this was his second flee from the police. This one obviously turned out to be fatal. So in reference to this firearm, it was left in the vehicle according to law enforcement. He never had it on his person. A lot of people are not comfortable with that because at the end of the day, people want to know, hey, well, he never had a gun. He should have never been shot. But technically, that's not how the law works in regards to police interacting with using lethal force against someone that they perceive to be as armed. At the time, we have to go based off of what information that the officers had during the time of the actual encounter. And so that's the issue with the gun. And I know it threw a lot of people off, but I'm here to tell you unequivocally that it's not uncommon practice for us to do that. I've done it all the time. I know based on going to court, I take photos where the gun was found and I take photos after the gun was disarmed because I got hemmed up in court for that a long time ago. So I believe that whatever officer manipulated that firearm, it should be on their body camera. Again, they only released enough footage of the shooting, but not the entire investigation of the actual shooting, which is also not uncommon simply because of legal reasons and court practices and things of that nature. They don't release the full body camera investigation to the public. They just don't do that. So I'm just saying that so people know that this is not uncommon for us to do.
My face is, I had to take my face off the camera so I didn't look a kind of way
I, I
to the
get it. I get
responses,
it. I get
because
it.
I think, again, I'm grateful that you're here. Shout out to Trish, giving the pounds tonight. Thank you so much always for supporting heavy topics tonight. Yes, we're not afraid to do them. Some of these are very, very difficult to discuss. I know me, sometimes, even as you can hear in my introduction, it is an emotional and a taxing thing to discuss someone's death in such a horrific way.
Right.
So I respect life. I respect the dignity of life, and the difficult job that law enforcement has. Notwithstanding some of the facts that you've outlined, there are going to be questions. I feel like I want to do a good cross exam right now, but I
Do
ain't
it.
gonna do it. But I
I
ain't gonna
love
do
it.
it. I ain't
You
gonna
can
do
do
it.
it.
In my heart, I'm like, let me ask you this.
Ask me. No, I want you to ask me, Suzette,
No,
because
because no, even what you just described as the protocol
right.
of, if a weapon is discharged or if a weapon is found on the person or at the scene, an officer is required to take a picture of where, is he or she required to take a picture of where the evidence was found
That's
before moving it?
that was my department's policy. So
Okay.
again, and I did it because I go to testify in court. And so what an attorney asks is, where was the gun located? I take a photo. I had a case recently. I was telling someone where the suspect hid the gun behind the baby seat in
Mm,
the cushion with the barrel facing up, and I charge him with cruelty to children, right? And so I pulled I pulled the cushion back off the baby seat, and then took a photo of the gun there, right
mm,
after I already removed it from the car and made it safe, and I arrested everybody involved. I put the gun back where I found it and took a photo of it. You cannot take a gun. You can't take photos of that stuff while the scene is still dangerous and things
uh,
are still active, right? So I'm doing a search on a car. There's still people moving around. I find the gun. The first thing is to make the gun safe and secure it. And then once everything is safe, the scene is safe, I can go back and start taking photos. They're going to say, where was the gun located? This is where it was located. This is how it was located. The barrel's facing up and the baby was sitting in the car seat. The gun was stolen, right? And so I take photos. So now when I bring that to court, everyone can see the actual photos of how it was. And this is before we had body cameras. So for
mm.
me, I photograph everything. So I'm saying that however the gun was found, it's going to be on someone's body camera. And
So for
so
you, this was a replacing of the gun, possibly, most likely,
I don't
or you
know.
don't. Yeah, you
There's
won't
no way to
speculate
know.
on that. I
Yeah,
know you can't speculate on it. So it would be on a body camera of an
correct,
officer who was
correct,
present.
correct,
Hopefully, that will be released.
correct,
That could tell us more about whether or not this is actually the replacement of it after it was so-called secured,
correct,
or if it was like this when he ran.
correct.
Tell me more about this. I didn't know about this. And again, thank you, Trish. I see DL saying thank you so much support and say you definitely want to clear the weapon once you have secured the scene. Clear it meaning empty the clip.
Yes, that means make it safe, take the
Okay.
rounds out and everything of that nature.
Okay, I got you. Thank you, DL. However, the amount of rounds fired, we haven't even got to that yet, sir.
Yeah.
We about to do work. We haven't even got to that. I was talking about with Officer Nathan Daley just now, for those just tuning in, what Mr. Jayland's Jayland Walker's behavior was first. We can talk about Jayland Walker behavior because I need to lay the foundation so that people understand what the heck, what was with the police response.
Right,
So I really wanted to emphasize, and we're going to back up just a little bit more on some of his quote unquote behavior according to officers.
right,
And again, we've received limited. This is the first week it's been released. We are doing this show right after the release of several um officers on the scenes, cameras, but not a lot in terms of the entirety of what happened from start to finish, right? So there's still some gaps, is what I'm saying. And we're doing this show as it literally just got released. So things may change as we watch what happens as far as more footage being released to the public. So I want to back up a little bit, and Dia, I'll read the rest of your comment first. However, the amount of rounds fired by the police that night is problematic. In my opinion, that's fear
Mm-hmm.
and poor training. All right, so I'm gonna we got the right person, DL. They're gonna break down what's going through all these officers' minds to let
Yeah.
go 60 rounds.
Well, it was nine. It was like 90 actually. They're
And
saying
60 that hit him.
allegedly 60. We don't know for sure.
Allegedly, thank you.
Allegedly.
And
Because
90 or more.
approximately 90 shots were fired. Allegedly 60 went through him. The reason why I say allegedly, one, we absolutely don't know how many bullets hit him, right? So that unfortunately
Is the rounded number.
it's a rounded number. It's a strong estimate, but there's two issues here. One, and let me just say this before I get started, because you guys, unfortunately, I see these things through the nuances because I investigate these type of crimes, right? So I see these things absent of emotion. And so we're going to talk about the facts. And I say it all the time on my channel. I know I'm on Suzette's channel today. I do facts over feelings, you guys. And I know sometimes this is difficult, but in my line of work, I chase after the evidence. I don't chase after the truth. The truth will lead you in the wrong direction, but the evidence will always take you where you need to go. That's how I look at it. That's how I break these things down, absent of emotion. Why is 60 shots? Why do I say that's an issue? Because we haven't been able to properly examine the body yet. That the medical examiner needs to examine. It could be more than 60. We don't know. But the reason why I say that, a lot of people don't know that it's possible that the entry and exit wounds could be counted as twice, right? So you're looking at an entry wound, but it's actually the exit wound, and the entry wound is actually the entry wound, but you're counting the entry and the exit as two bullet holes. So if it's 60, one could argue that maybe it was actually 30 when you actually investigate the body properly. That's the reason why I say we don't know. I don't expect anyone to think on that level. And again, that's why we're having this conversation, if that makes sense. Regardless of the fact, the shooting was very barbaric. It was extremely excessive, and it gave the impression of a firing squad. Regardless of what he did, the response of the officers were extremely, extremely excessive. And there's some nuance into this shooting that needs to be addressed. And to the gentleman's point earlier on the super chat, that needs to be addressed. There's a couple things that are going on. This was a sign of poorly trained police officers. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. One of the things that need to be examined, again, there were 13 police officers at the scene. Out of the 13, only 8 police officers shot their weapon. That's another issue. 8 people shot their weapon, and they shot over 90 times. That's a problem. So when we start looking at this case, if I show up on the scene as an investigator, what am I looking at? The first thing I'm looking at is, one, why did they shoot? What did they feel? What were the reasons that they felt justified in pulling the trigger, and why so many times? Where's what we call trigger discipline? That's what it means. Trigger discipline, a discipline to be actually focused, aware, have situational awareness, understand what's going on, know where you're shooting, who you're shooting, and how many times you're shooting. That's something that has to be trained. That's not something that you can just do on your own. What is another issue that needs to be addressed? There is a concept called sympathetic fire. For those who, if you haven't heard of that term before, sympathetic fire. In so many words, what it actually means is it is a knee-jerk reaction. Basically, when you hear a gun go off, you panic and you pull the trigger as well. It is a unconscious response that is reflective of a person who's not trained properly. Sympathetic fire is and will be used as a defense on this particular case. Absolutely. Is it a legitimate argument? Yes, it is a legitimate argument. Um, One of the issues here with the 8 police officers, I watched all 13 body cameras. 7 of the officers are white, 1 of the officers are black. They all fired their gun. Some officers shot 3 times, some shot more than 3, and some shot the entire gun in the direction of Jayland. What is the issue with this that I have? One, the lack of self-control, the lack of trigger discipline, the lack of situational awareness, and just overall poor judgment and poor training. That goes without saying. After Jayland hit the ground, they continued to shoot him for an additional 5 seconds. The shooting itself lasted 7 seconds. He was shot several times. He dropped to the ground, and they continued to fire on him. That has to be addressed. That is grossly excessive force, unnecessary level of force. The issue, though, is people are going to argue if they were authorized to use lethal force. Does it matter in the manner of how the lethal force was executed? I would
Or
say
whether
that
it was excessive.
well, if you're authorized to use lethal force within itself is lethal.
So to death, period.
Well, officers they're trained to shoot to stop the threat. So one could argue is if they are shooting to stop the threat, what is the threshold when the threat no longer becomes a threat? That will be the argument, right? I think what ends up happening is law starts to blur itself with moral values and a moral perspective. Because here's how I examine the shooting, you guys. Based on the body camera, it only tells a portion of what the officers see. It cannot speak for 100% of what the officers see, experience, touch, and feel in the 6 senses that they have, right? What does that mean? That means that the other part of the evidence is coming from the actual officers' live, real-time experience, what they are seeing in real time. What they are feeling, you cannot anticipate. We cannot speculate based on the body camera. We're talking about fear, nervousness. We're talking about anxiousness. All those things cannot be anticipated on the body camera. The body camera only gives us a piece of the evidence for us to examine. What do we see? They are suggesting he made a movement in a threatening manner. They assume that he was still armed, which is reasonable. Any reasonable officer would assume he was still armed. In my personal, humble, professional opinion, will this shooting be considered to be justified? I believe the first 2 officers who shot would probably be cleared of the shooting. I think the question then lies if only 1 or 2 officers were justified in shooting, which I do believe that they were justified in using lethal force, then the question becomes, what about the 6 other officers? What gave them justification to shoot? Because that's when it becomes excessive. The excessiveness is how do all these officers feel in fear for their life? Because that is actually an element that is needed in order to use deadly force. You are using it to protect yourself or the life of another person. You have to be, as an officer, in fear of receiving, not receive, but receiving great bodily harm or death. One could argue that the officers felt that, or the officer who decided to shoot absolutely felt that, based off of how they got to this point to begin with. Of course, the arguments and speculations will all be done in court with all the collective evidence, but this is the argument that the officer is making on the scene as of now. The movement, the reaction of the officer, unfortunately created a chain reaction and then an overuse of that action. In so many ways, I look at it as a justified shooting that led to several unjustified shootings. That is my assessment.
I hear you, brother. I'm digesting what you're saying. So as we look at this together, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm just trying to
Nah,
tell
do it.
you what I heard, and I
Do it.
just want to make sure if it's along the same lines of what you intended to say.
Okay.
So when you're saying, I just want to back up. So you're saying you're not looking for truth, you're looking for evidence.
Correct.
You're saying truth is relative depending on who you ask what the truth is.
It can be biased. Correct.
The truth is not, because I think it's like your truth, their truth, and the truth, but you're not saying
Correct.
the truth. You're saying the evidence is the truth. Of if I'm looking for an end in mind, I'm looking for evidence to lead me to that. And we, especially in law, we try to stay away from that. We want to make sure the evidence is showing us
That's right.
where the truth lies. I just want
There
to
you go.
clarify that, because when you said you're not looking for truth, I'm like, people are probably like, what is he talking about? But you're saying
Understood.
your truth. But they say the
Right.
truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But a lot of people think, they
Understood.
pick someone out of a lineup and they saw that person and they know that's the person that killed that person, and it's not the
That's
truth.
right. That's
It's
correct.
not. Evidence would say that person was at home with his wife, or that person was there, or whatever. So I get what you're saying. I just want to clarify that because of the way you said it. Now, when it comes to what happened as far as their reaction,
Mhm.
you're telling us that the training allows, once one officer's life is deemed to be in danger, meaning the officer that called in and said he was shot at, then all bets were off in terms of de escalation, in terms of having to use lesser non lethal force, or I should say, on top of that, when the tasers were deployed and no taser stuck, because you need both leads to hit the body,
Right.
no taser neutralized, they were within their training, let's say. I'm not going to even speculate within the law, but within their training, to at least the first two that shot, to
So
protect themselves in a lethal way, to use lethal force to protect themselves.
so what I would say is the danger comes from a person's hands and the use of a weapon. So
Hmm.
the Supreme Court says, what does an officer need to be able to use deadly force?
Hmm.
The suspect needs what we call AOJ, which is they have to have the ability, the opportunity, and present the jeopardy. The ability is a weapon. In this case, it'll be a handgun. Did he have that? Per the officer's understanding, they are under the impression that he is armed with the gun. That's the ability. He has the ability, he has the means to create great bodily harm or death to an officer. The second component is opportunity, meaning, is he in close proximity? Is he close enough to be able to use the weapon? The question is yes. If we're under we're under the assumption that he has a gun. The last piece is jeopardy, meaning that the suspect has to manifest the threat in a way to where he can actually carry it out. Meaning the officers have to be able to articulate that they are in immediate danger from receiving great bodily harm or death. If you have those things, you have a green light to take someone's life. The reality, though, is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Every situation is different. Nothing will ever be the same. No situations will ever be the same. This was a very, very interesting case. It was poorly executed. It's not how officers are trained to deal with felony stops. That's another thing. Police training. So, what happened? We know we have the ability, we know we have the opportunity, the jeopardy. When you start factoring in the anxiety, the stress, the fear, the flight, when you start factoring in the time of night, you can't really see. When you start these are the arguments that they're going to make. Hey, I couldn't really tell it was a gun. I just saw his hand movement going in this direction, right? So what are they going to say? Well, yeah, it wasn't bright enough to make that out. So of course I did shoot out of fear of receiving great bodily harm or death. Is that a legitimate argument for an officer to make? Absolutely. It's an absolutely strong argument that'll hold up in court. The problem, though, is if he does that movement in the direction of a particular officer, that officer is now in direct alignment to receive said threat. So now the issue is if he only faced one officer was in alignment with him, how do you explain the other 12 officers at the scene? How many other officers were in alignment to receive great bodily harm or death? That is my question in regards to this case that these officers are going to have to explain. So when I say that maybe 2 officers at best were in alignment of that danger, they're facing him that moment when he said turned around. Okay, that's fine. Now, how do you explain the other 6 that shot and they were not in direct threat of receiving great bodily harm? So this is where, when we start breaking it down using the law to look at police procedure and police behavior. Hey, officer number 12, why did you pull the trigger? Because here's the issue with some of these body cameras I saw. The shooting had already begun, and then another officer joins in after he's already on the ground. He shot him while his body was already laying on the ground. How do you justify that? You cannot, because the threat had already dissipated. The threat was no longer there, and you joined in afterwards. It looks like a firing squad.
Yeah, exactly.
So the issue here is, though 2 things can be true at the same time, it's not mutually exclusive. You can have a justified shooting with several unjustified responses, which make it excessive. And this reminds me of the Breonna Taylor case. And they weren't charged properly, and they should have been charged properly. You had officers who shot 30 plus times inside of an apartment building, and one person outside of the apartment couldn't see anything at all.
Just shooting.
And just shooting. He should have been charged, and he was not charged. He was protected. And so again, that goes against police procedures and teachings. That's not how we're trained. And so shooting in the dark on the Breonna Taylor case, you're trained to use a flashlight. Some of those officers on Jayland Walker's case are shooting with no flashlight. So one would even argue
you put the public in danger.
You put the public in danger. You shot at a suspect. Did you confirm? Did you verify that there was an actual weapon? One would argue that no, they did not, because he actually did not have a weapon. But the counter argument is going to be, well, it was dark. Police officers are not trained to wait to be shot at before they can shoot back. This is why I always tell people it's always in your best interest, of course, to comply to survive. You open up Pandora's box when you resist arrest. You open up Pandora's box, and then you put the responsibility on people who are not trained as good as you think they are to preserve your life, and they're not obligated to by the law. They're just not. They're not. And that's what makes it dangerous.
You've said so much there. I'm going to drop the link. We're going to have about maybe 30 minutes or less more. I want to touch on a few more things. Big Ben, thank you, Officer Nathan Daley, for breaking that down. There are things I agree with, things I don't, but maybe it doesn't matter whether I do or not. That's how officers think, which is more important. I want others who are watching to get a good insight in terms of the mindset and the thought process of when and how lethal force is applied. So you've done a wonderful job of kind of expounding on that for us. Big Ben on the 1999 Super Chat, thank you so much, says, let's not dance around the fact that cops have more, quote, trigger discipline with white suspects versus black suspects. This has nothing to do with, quote unquote, poor training. White mass shooters are always taken alive. And I've seen a couple of comments in the chat saying the same thing. Similar sentiment. You got a guy named, Robert Crimo. Tell me.
That's not true.
Go ahead.
And it's important. And Suzette, I want you to ask whatever questions you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not, I know this is not for me. It's not for us. It's bigger than us. Mm-hmm. It's for our audience to see. This is a conversation we actually absolutely have to have. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of myths and misconception in regards to police-related shootings, and it's done by design. So there's no attack against me. I'm just going to lay out the facts. People can digest it however they feel comfortable with, but the harsh reality is, in reference to what Big Ben just said, that's not accurate. It's not accurate. I can show you just as many white people who've been shot multiple times excessively. You just haven't heard about it. So I think the problem here, one of the biggest issues and the reason for my channel is to combat a lot of these myths that have been circling around our community by design. That's by design. The media shows us what they want us to see. The reason why I know these things, because I work in the profession, I hear the stuff, I see the things that the average person doesn't see, you'll never hear about. It never makes the news. So the media is extremely biased on how they report content to the public. I have cases. I can give you cases, you guys, if you want to see white people shot indiscriminately. There's a case right now, the officer waiting trial who shot a man in a wheelchair, a white man in a wheelchair. His name is Richie Richard. If you want to look him up, shot 9 times in the back by a white police officer going into Walmart. You guys, it does happen to white people. Contrary to people's belief, white people are shot more and killed by the police than black people. Contrary to our belief, black officers shoot almost more black people than white officers do. But this is the problem. The media is playing games with our community, and we are absorbing it, and we're following right along. And it's causing a lot of emotional and psychological trauma in our community. This is a fact. They don't show you these cases involving white officers and white men, or black officers and black suspects. Black officers shoot. I know I got friends who have shot plenty of black men in the black community who were a threat. It never makes the news because the media knows it's not profitable. So again, someone made a comment about mass shooters that are white mass shooters that are taken in custody. Yes, Crimo was taken in custody. Why? Without being killed, because he complied, you guys. He was not a threat to the police. Once you become a threat, you guys, you're out of here. You're out of here. The officers and the police are not required to protect or preserve your life when you are a danger to them. Someone asked me not too long ago about black mass shooters. Yes, we have black mass shooters, you guys. You don't hear about them. I don't know what to tell you, but there are a lot of them. A lot of us need to understand what it means to be a mass shooter.
There's a definition. Yep, go ahead.
Actual definition is when a person shoots 4 or more people in a particular setting. They don't have to die. They just need to be shot. You guys, that's it. We are trained to believe that a mass shooter is a white kid that goes into a school and shoots a bunch of white kids. That's not what a mass shooter is. One could argue we have a lot of mass shooters in our own community. Gang violence, right? So there's a lot of black people who shoot other people and shot the police and have been safely placed in custody and taken to jail. Last year, or 2019, let me use this data, 1.8 million people, black people, were arrested by the police safely. People don't know about a case with Brian Nichols. If you're here in Atlanta, you know about Brian Nichols. What did he do? Brian Nichols was on charge. He was in the court for rape, and he was on trial. He stole a deputy's gun while in the courtroom, shot and killed the judge, shot and killed the deputy. He shot his way out of a secure facility, a courthouse filled with police officers. He had a shootout. He escapes, he carjacks, kills somebody else. He killed 4 people in total. They were able to arrest him a few days later, safe and sound. He's in prison, you guys, right? He's black. Some of you probably never heard of him. It happened here in Atlanta. Who else? We have the DC sniper, the shooters. They killed like 17 people. And those are 2 black men. You guys, serial killers, mass shooters, they're in all ethnic groups. They're in all ethnic groups, and they are in prison. There are a lot of black people who are in prison today because they were safely arrested by the police. We have to stop repeating this narrative that is grossly inaccurate. You can't complain about the jails being overpopulated with black people and then turn around and say that police are killing all the black people. It's not true. On average, police only kill about 200 black folks a year. Out of the 1.8 million they arrested safely. I mean, I'm open to any questions.
No, I know. I'm listening. I'm reading the chat. I see you in the back, DL. DL, face your light source, darling. Put the light in front of you instead of behind you. It'll make your face brighter. See me in the private chat, DL. But I'm listening to you. I'm processing also. There's so much you just said because I'm relating it to this case, and I'm also relating it to just general facts about what, as you call it, the miseducation of Black people.
Correct.
It seems to be with regards to shooting and killing done by police of all races. And I
Right.
don't have the statistics to kind of go back and forth with you. That's why I just dropped the link. Anybody want to come up, you can ask questions and stuff. No, I'm going to ask you a few, but there are some things here, like I said, within this specific case, I'm more concerned with, but I'm grateful that you've opened up the conversation so that people can start to look at the information. And if
Yes.
they want to challenge the idea that, there are Black mass shooters just, not talked about, let's
Yep.
go. If they want to challenge the idea that there are Black cops that are also killing Black folks or murdering or using excessive force, as many would characterize this, or that there are just as many white people that are being killed at the hands of, or more, as you've
Right.
stated. It's just giving me a lot of food for thought. And again, I don't have the research, I haven't done it, so that I can speak about it intelligently. But it's definitely here, I hope, thought provoking enough for people to want to understand and
Yes.
look past the headlines, which is important. I think, again, we've done work if we're doing that. I have to acknowledge my super chat, Uncle Stu. I did put it up, but I want to just say shout out to my brother, big brother in this YouTube game. Uncle Stu, the old man on the block, says salute, salute, big up, showing love and support. Thank you also, Big Ben, again for your question and comment.
Great.
I've dropped the link. I'm going to read a few and we'll get some responses to it.
Hmm.
Yes, get another job then if you're too scary or if you're not ready for that smoke. And
That's unfair.
honestly,
That's an unfair assessment because we're all human. Why would police lack human emotion? Do you want robots to do the job? Do you want RoboCop
I
to
don't think they're saying
identify?
they want RoboCops, but
But I
if
get
you
I
go
get
ahead.
it. I get it. I get what they're saying, but it's not that easy. Fear is a human emotion. And fear is a part of survival. We want to talk about the fear that the officers have. Don't put officers in a position to be fearful, right? There's also another question behind that. We can't ask for police reform without addressing citizen reform, and we have to stop ignoring that people are doing things and putting themselves in harm's way. There's a two-piece to this, right? Accountability falls on both sides.
Citizens reform, as in, what do you mean by that?
Well, we don't address the behavior of a citizen as they are breaking the law. We only look at the outcome of them breaking the law and getting hurt by law enforcement. Meaning you
Hmm.
can't talk about what the police are doing and then not examine what the citizens are doing. Um,
Okay.
and that in reference to that.
Thank you, Jess. Justice says, Sister Suzette, I just found your channel. Thank you. I appreciate the subs, guys. If you just come into my channel for the first time, says, and I love it, but bro ain't it. He's sprinkling in a bit of truth with a thick propaganda sandwich. Oh
Bring
Lord,
it up. Someone come on up. What did I say? Tell me what I said that wasn't
not the
accurate.
propaganda.
I
It's
like that. That's pretty dope.
gaslighting and offensive, to be honest. Okay, I
That's
hear
fine.
you, and thanks for coming over. Thanks for the sub. I appreciate you. Philando Castile says, "Cuz I see you."
Mm,
Just as it's crazy how these cops always expect the citizens to be trained and disciplined to act a certain way, but these dang cops, with all emphasis, their training and equipment, just claim "quote unquote" fear.
let
I
me
hear you. Go ahead.
let me address that, and let me address the Philando Castile. Um, to his point about Philando Castile, that officer should have been charged accordingly. Philando Castile should have never been shot. Again, that officer, well, I don't know what he was thinking, but he killed a man, right? Illegally. He should have never been killed. They tried to find a way to justify it, and they did. So the problem with the Philando Castile situation is that is not the norm. And they can't name me another person who was shot in that manner. And I can
Mm.
name 6 white people who were shot the same way as Philando Castile. Again, is this about race? When white people are dying the same way, if we can't analyze this thing from a mature state of mind, you guys, you're gonna always lean back on the Philando Castile argument. Um, what I will say though, someone made a comment earlier though that I wanted to address that you went by.
Justice was talking about individuals not being trained, but cops being trained, etc.
Yes, yeah. So in
Mhm.
reference to that comment, that's true. I'm telling you that the police are trained poorly. So again, do you want to take a risk and gamble your freedom and your life on someone who isn't trained properly? You're telling me something that I already know. I'm telling you that they're not trained well. If you want to play Russian roulette with your freedom and your life, I am trying to educate you on how to avoid it by complying. You comply. If you resist arrest, If you pose a danger or a threat to an officer, he is not obligated to keep your life alive. That's a fact. Do with that as you will.
I'm gonna bring up DL. DL, I see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. What are your comments on tonight's special guest, as well as what happened in these two cases? Glad you're here, my brother.
I'm glad to be here. I couldn't leave you alone on a tough one like this. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Shout out to brother Nathan over there.
Shout out to
Yes,
you.
sir.
I just want to be 100. Like, y'all know about my background. I mean, I literally did come from the streets. I know what that's like. So there's a lot of truth to what the brother is saying. You need to be compliant to police officers. My biggest thing, it sucks, I know, but the fear and the lack of training will get you killed.
Yes.
Brother Doug was saying there's 2 to 3 times more white folks that are shot by police officers or killed by police officers than blacks. That makes sense. I mean, we're still a minority here. We're the majority of the country don't have any white folks, but the number of brothers and sisters out there dying at the hand of police officers is still way too high. Now, here's my thing, brother. I just wanted to tell you up front. I got to tip my hat to you because it is really difficult to find law enforcement officials to come and tell the truth. I haven't heard you say anything that's off point, bro. I'm just being 100 with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, but yeah, like the amount of rounds that they used on that guy, like you pointed out, that is absolutely excessive. And I do have a little pushback for you, brother. You was talking about training out the fear. You can't train out fear. You can. I'm a paratrooper. I jump with tons of people who are afraid of heights. You can train out fear. The fact that I can run into a firefight, no problem, with all my weapons, with all my equipment back in the day, right, and not fire until ordered to fire, that takes training and discipline. That is what local law enforcement is sorely missing. Training, right, discipline, and having the best and brightest. You're not going to get the best and brightest at what, $15 an hour in some of these places?
Right. No. To your point though, that's exactly what I was saying, is that you can train that. The statement I made earlier about sympathetic fire, and that is a fearful response, right? It is a fearful response, and the only way to fix that is through training. You have to train that out of people. And that's how I know the officers were poorly trained, because you had some officers who shot 3 times and then some emptied the entire clip. And if you can't, as you know, with military training, that's what separates military from law enforcement. You guys have so much more downtime to actually train versus police. They're running us back to back to back to back. And they're sending us into calls, into circumstances that we shouldn't even be dealing with in the first place. Almost 70% of the calls are social calls anyways. And so we need to reimagine policing, retraining officers. Less is more, in my personal opinion. And they should be used for basically mainly felony related type of offenses and not misdemeanors. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to clarify that yes, this can absolutely be solved by training. 100% agree.
Absolutely. And there's one of the things that my buddy Jay Swans and I, and people in the chat here, they know who I'm talking about. When people said when Black Lives Matter came out and defund the police came out, first of all, that was the dumbest title to any kind of mission statement I've ever heard in my life. No one wants a world, especially in America, where there are more guns than people, where you don't have law enforcement. People out there who are listening to me, I'm telling you, you ain't built for it. I've been through that life. I don't want it. You talking to a man who firmly believes in the Second Amendment. Everything I have is legal. I don't want a world in which there are no law enforcement. So here's the thing. We have to pay law enforcement more. We have to vet them. The training has to be akin to a washout rate that we see in the military with the Rangers and Green Berets. You can't let anybody be a cop. If you just got some dude who liked to beat people up in high school because he was the linebacker at his high school, you can't just let him be a cop because he's the only one who wants a job. You have to make the job more advantageous. It is dangerous. Police officers lose their life all the time. We just saw in the news there was 3 officers, I think in Texas, that was shot. Luckily, they didn't die. I want to say in Kentucky, 3 did die.
Police officers, like you said, had a rough weekend, and through July 4th till now, several across the country were shot or or killed. I just want to interrupt you real quick just to acknowledge Big Bro is in the chat. The lead attorney says salute to Suzette and Nathan. Thank you for
So
coming
what's
through,
up?
Lead. I
Shout out to you,
appreciate you, my
PLA.
brother.
Shout out
So
to you.
much of my YouTube journey is tied to
Same.
this man, and I want you to go check out his channel. Phenomenal content creator and mentor. Thank you very much, Lee. But as you were saying, this is not for the faint-hearted, DL, this type of career.
It's not, and I'm not, and people in the chat, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here advocating for the current police force that we have out here now. I'm not advocating for these bad cops that are out there. We know they're out here. Like, and shout out to this brother right here on screen who's willing to step forward, right? Step over that thin blue line, which I think is BS, and point out the facts. He just said it. We need to get rid of some of these police officers. And in order to entice the people you need, they have to be paid. And the thing is this, there shouldn't be a police officer anywhere in America making less than $100,000 a year. It shouldn't exist. The government should, for these smaller municipalities, pay the difference. Every police officer should make that money. However, this should be one of the hardest jobs in the world to keep. In other words, you have to continuously train. And to your point, brother, about the downtime, 100% correct. For every day I'm downrange, right, I'm back in the rear with the gear for a month.
Yep.
So just think about that, people. As a soldier, we got a lot of downtime.
Yep.
You got police officers going out dealing with the worst of the worst. I'm sure this brother can tell you stories about the children that he see that gets abused and hurt and mangled, and then have to come out the next day and deal with a guy who is suspected of doing this. Yep. I know what I would want to do to that person. It takes a lot of training to be able
discipline.
to, right? So shout out
discipline. Yeah, there's only a small amount of people. It's like the training for FBI agents. There's only a small amount of people that really should be doing this.
Yes.
Because they have to have a very deep moral core, moral center, self-discipline like a mug.
Yes.
Being able to judge, you know, people's emotional state, or just very good discerners of people and their behavior.
And we don't have that.
That sixth sense of how I know DL from the impression I get from knowing you so long. You know, you can read people. You see what the environment is telling you. You pick up on clues. You can tell when there's a shift in the atmosphere. Like, you should be able to, like, understand, especially if you're going in certain neighborhoods, like the atmosphere, the tempo, what to look for, what not to look for. And if they don't have that, it's going to make the job so much more dangerous for both them and the public, because they're now out of a fish out of water. Even when I look at certain police departments down here, shout out to cities like Miami Gardens and such like that. Oh my gosh. I look at some of the officers, where are they from? Ohio, freaking, you know, middle of the country. And, you know, people who haven't really seen even Black faces on a regular basis. Not saying that they are in a mindset of like to be racist, but they are just not used to identifying Black features and things like this. And they're 1 and 2 year officers, and they're putting them on the force in like the blackest city in Florida. Like, it's the craziest thing. And I think about, I'm like, if these guys who lived in, you know, rural country, middle America, come down here for the paycheck and to live next to the beach, it's a crazy thing to imagine they're going to be in the heart of the city. And our lives are in their hands in many ways.
Legitimately.
It's the scariest thing. So I think sometimes there is too much emphasis on, I hear what you're saying. I see you, Jess. She is, or he is very active. If you want to come up, the link has been dropped.
Yeah, come on up.
Trained poorly. That's just a narrative that leads the machine to dump more money into their budgets. No amount of, quote, training outweighs a cop's mindset. I agree. That's basically what we're saying. I've got 20 years of direct experience. I can imagine.
So let me add, if I can respond to that.
Go ahead, please.
Here's two things, and we're gonna just look at it like this. We're gonna do the numbers. Unfortunately, in our community, because I've worked predominantly in the Black community, 13 years, I've seen it. I've seen it all. This is the reality of it. Unfortunately, in our community, we have conflated things based on living vicariously through other people, hearing things from other people. A lot of our issues with law enforcement is not even our own issues. A lot of people don't like the police and never had a bad experience with one. I understand the historical setting of this country. I get it. There's only two ways this thing is going to work. You either get up and do the job because you don't want white people doing it, or you have to sit down and be quiet and let white people do the job for you. This is how it works. Either that or you police yourself. Those are your only options. Or leave the country, right? That's it, you guys. We don't have a lot of options. If you want things to change, you need to get up, sign up, put yourself in a position of power to bring about change. You can't make change on the outside. Sign up and do the job. How about we start grooming the people that we see fit to patrol and secure our own communities? Therefore, we won't have these issues that we are complaining about, allegedly, right? The other issue is this. The police on average arrest 10 million people a year. That's a lot of people. 10 million people on average. This is very consistent every year. On average, 60 million police officers. Well, on average, 60 million people have an encounter with the police every year. That's 60 million. On average, every year, you guys, consistently, only 1,100 people lose their life from a police encounter. 10 million arrested, 1,100 people killed from a police encounter. One could argue that officers are better trained than the media would have us believe, right? Here's the other issue. Because when you start breaking it down, unfortunately, in our community, you're more likely to be killed by someone who looks like you than you are the police. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. So again, we are allowing the media bias to influence how we look at the situation. It's not our fault. The problem I have is when someone is bringing bringing the information to us, we lean so much on our confirmation bias. We don't want to accept the truth. I'm urging and encouraging everyone to do your own research. Stop allowing the headlines to dictate your emotions and how you feel about a situation. We either step up, sign up, do the job, or we police ourselves. Those are our only options, you guys. That's it.
I got some pushback for you, brother.
Go ahead, brother.
So, and I agree with what you're saying. However, that's where the racial component comes in heavy. Because we both know in order to get into the police department, there are so many levels. And at any step along the way, they can say you're not qualified. So I know for a fact when the LAPD or LA Sheriff Department are looking at someone potentially to hire, they go into your home and they go through your entire record. And if anyone in your family has been convicted of a serious crime, that can disqualify you. Now, I don't have any numbers, but I would venture to say that the same amount of people, no matter what color they are, they have a criminal element in their family. I know guys who were police officers who have direct links to the Italian mob. They're Italians, right? But they're in, whereas African Americans tend to get disqualified. Now, that again, we're not working in a vacuum here, y'all. There are multiple issues.
Yes. Let me respond to that. I agree with
I'm about to say everybody got a cousin, but go ahead, Nathan. Everybody got a cousin.
I agree. And this incident right now with Crimo is a perfect example, right? His son was a menace to society. They all acknowledged that his son stayed in trouble. He was always a troublemaker in the community. They all knew this. His father still ran for mayor, right? So you're making a valid point. The issue is this: we're 14% of the population, whatever we want to lie. We're not the majority. The majority is white in this country. That's a fact.
Soon to be Latino.
Soon to be, yes. I think currently already the Hispanic community has already outnumbered us, right? So the issue is, here's the biggest problem. The problem in our community is multifaceted because we don't utilize and leverage our political power properly to get the things that we want. So one could even argue that, no, you don't necessarily need to have your hands in everything, but you need to make sure you are actually putting people in the right position to make sure they are arguing your interests. We do not do that in our community. This is why we continue to have the same problems. You don't ever see Asian people talking about they want to run for president. No, their money and their economic strength runs and makes decisions for them. So again, we are not utilizing our power and numbers collectively to fix our own issues, and we are not putting ourselves in certain positions. A lot of us don't want to do the job. I have people emailing me all the time saying, hey, Nathan, I really appreciate what you're doing. I wanted to be a cop, but I'm disrespected and insulted all the time for bringing it up. People say I'm not black, right? They call me a sellout if I want to be a police officer. We discourage people in our own community from doing this job. So when you talk about this profession, why do we mistreat the people who are in it? If you go through the chat, you'll see some people calling me names, right? And I'm here to help them out. I'm here to help our people have better outcomes with law enforcement, and they will push me to the side. They will call me a sellout. They will call me an Uncle Tom. I had someone the other day say I was a gatekeeper for white supremacy. So if you are getting attacked by the same people you're trying to help and save, why would any of us want to do the job? We have a culture that glorifies a lot of criminal behavior. You have people who look at that and say, hey, if you decide to be a cop, you can't be considered black anymore. This goes on in our community. So we can't turn around and say, we tried. No, we don't want to do it out of fear of being shunned by our own people. We're not present where it matters most. And we have a toxic culture that seems to be counterproductive for the quality and well-being of our growth as a community in this country. Until we talk about the mentality of some of our people, we will never fix this problem. The same problem we have when we talk about obeying and respecting authority, whether that's parents, teachers, or police, there is a problem in our community that we're not addressing. Because I can bring up a whole bunch of teachers who will say, I can't get these black kids to do anything. They're disrespectful, they're rude, and their parents co-sign them. I've seen it through our community, and it's off the chain. And so they don't respect their parents. They don't respect authority. They don't respect teachers, and they don't respect the police. There has to be a discussion about the mentality on a lot of the youth and a lot of our young adults and why they're having these outcomes. Because the biggest problem I see when I encounter our people is our lack of respect for authority and also our ability and means to resist in the moment when we should not be resisting. What ultimately leads us to
let me have some commentary. I see you, Big Ben. Big Ben, just flash your face for me so I can see that you're a real person. I want to thank Mr. Ezra, the insurance broker, who will be coming on next Wednesday. Thank you for always showing love and the support. I'm glad you found me, and I'm glad we will be collaborating next week. I believe it's going to be Wednesday on the topic men building and protecting your legacy. Men building and protecting your legacy. Can't wait to have you on. He says mass shooting in the black community is a great point at Nathan, but our community don't treat it as such. Okay, I understand. Thank you very much, Ezra, and I can't wait to have you on. Big Ben, flash your face. If you did, I missed it because I was reading the super chat. Okay, I see you.
But I would bring
you up. Go ahead, DL, and then Big Ben. Go ahead.
I would add on to what Brother Nathan is saying, and I talk to people about this all the time. And the black community don't care about politics. We don't care about education.
Y'all make such broad brush.
And no, I'm just okay.
The black people that I know in my children are this. Black children, it hurt my spirit because I'm like, not every.
It's well, not okay. Agree to that. I'm not gonna say not every, but here's the thing: when I was growing up, I was shunned because I was a latchkey kid who was used his time not only watching cartoons but watching PBS. It was just me. So I can tell you everything about every war America's ever fought. I didn't learn that in school, right? I didn't go to the library and get books. I watched it on public broadcasters. I could tell you about the stars. I didn't learn none of that in school, right? But I didn't get accolades until I got on the football field. I didn't get accolades until I was on the street doing what we was doing. I got accolades for that, right? And I'm trying to tell you, this is a thing, Suzette. We do not put any kind of emphasis on education or critical thinking. If anyone gets stopped by law enforcement, you're dealing with a person, generally a white guy, generally somebody from a different bubble to yours, don't understand what's going on, and you want to act the ass, you want to reach into your pocket, you want to reach into the car, I'm sorry, they're going to tear you up. You got to understand that's the society we live in right now. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me to sit here, and I know a lot of people like, damn, bro, you know what I mean? I got to tell y'all the truth. Don't be stupid when you're dealing with a police officer. I deal with weapons, right? My weapons will discharge on me if I don't handle them properly. I can accidentally delete myself if I'm not careful dealing with my weapons. If you out here dealing with these police officers, and a lot of them are blunt weapons, they're looking for an excuse to fire on you. This brother who's in the business just told you. They just said it. They looking for an excuse to light you up. Why give it to them? So exactly. I wanted to throw that in there, man. We do not, and politically, why is it? Politically, we don't hold anybody to account. There's not a single politician elected to any office that I'm aware of that we hold to account. They come out here, they give these speeches, they say their names, then they go back and they don't try to pass any laws They don't
Nope.
try to hold anybody to account. They can go in and deal with these law enforcement officials. This brother sitting here on the screen right now, he knows who the bad cops are. There are other cops out there, but guess what? The good cops who greatly outnumber the bad cops can't
Yep.
do nothing because of that culture. Again, training. That there were bad soldiers when I was in, but we peered them out. Simple as that. You can't be on this team anymore because you don't have what it takes. Bye. That we have that authority in the military. The Green Berets do it, the SEALs do it, the Rangers do it. Any elite organization can peer you out. The guys on your team are like, you gotta go, and they're backed by command. Police can't do that.
Nope. Nope.
All right, let me just break down some stuff. I think sometimes we are maybe conflating race and economics. I think there are layers to this. I think sometimes when we look at Black culture as it is now, Black culture before it was infiltrated by poverty was quite different. So I'm going to just reintroduce the idea that there are layers to this, race being one of them, but I think socioeconomics being another. And I don't think we can broad stroke. I think as much as is being done, in my opinion, because I do see there's Black culture and there's Black culture that is promoted by the media. And I do think what we see is an over promotion of like bad behavior as quote all Black culture. And again, I think there's so many parts of the country, socioeconomic classes that don't adhere to and whose kids are not being raised in this kind of, no holds barred fashion. Yo, Nathan, get your what's up with your what's up with
That
his
actually
internet?
came out.
I'm really gonna be okay. Go ahead, Big Ben. Since we got Nathan dropping off, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, fam?
Nice to have you. What's going on? Tell me your thoughts tonight.
Well, first of all, I appreciate Nathan for coming on the show and giving a law enforcement perspective. I want to say I don't think it's cool that people are calling you a sellout and agents of white supremacy. 'Cause I know your intentions are good, and that's why you're here. I do believe I understand why.
Are they calling me a sellout in the chat?
No,
No, not you.
Oh, you talking about Nathan? Okay.
No. He mentioned that.
Oh yes, he did. He did. My bad. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Black people were calling him that.
Yes.
And although I don't agree with that, I think
I don't think he is at all. But go ahead.
I think I understand why they're saying that, and I think the reason is I think he is kind of understating how race plays a role in interactions with police and Black civilians.
Mm-hmm.
There's racism still exists, and so police departments all over the country falls under that. Police departments aren't exempt for racism. White supremacy still exists.
Yeah.
And from a factual point, as far as data, in 2006, I know that was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
In 2006, the FBI released a report or a bulletin stating the problem of white supremacists being infiltrated throughout police departments in the country. And so this was surprisingly, the FBI admitted this.
Yeah.
And so, if we assume that this is true, I think something like that is worth mentioning to add to this conversation. We can't pretend like racism, racial bias does not exist.
Yeah.
That can affect
absolutely
how white police interact with Black suspects. Subconsciously, you may have officers who subconsciously criminalize Black people before they even start
on site.
On site. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
you have a bunch of things going on at the same time.
Sure. So I think it's he brought up a lot of facts and statistics as far as how many Black people are getting killed versus white people and all that, and I get that, but I think we do have to we can't ignore the racial
I think
element.
with Nathan, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I hear with him, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. Nathan, come on back, and we're gonna wrap up in a little bit. It's like more of an emphasis on personal responsibility and less of an emphasis on like systemic problems. You understand? Like that's what I hear when I hear him. You have
Sure, but it should be it's
when you
all
step out your door to think more as in terms of what is the other person thinking, and what is that like. Again, I tell people all the time, you got to be really careful when you call police. You have to be very careful. I have friends. I did a show. I didn't even air it with a friend girl of mine whose brother had a mental health breakdown in Orlando. Shout out to the family of
right.
Samuel Celestin is his name. And Sam had a like a episode, right? Mother couldn't control him. Called police. Police came and they literally, he was so disoriented. Of course, he's having like a mental breakdown. Ran from them, bolted. They hog tied and tased that man to death. Like, can you imagine your organs
Yeah.
on your neighbor's front lawn? Took over a year to release the video. So much of that case, I'm just like, again, it's like another trauma, another trauma, another trauma. And
Yep.
again, as Officer Nathan Daley says, but we don't hear about the white people that's actually going through the same thing. So I hear you. I hear you. I hear you on that.
Yeah, there was another story similar to that. A mother had a son who had a mental health issue, and so she understands that maybe the cops may come in kind of aggressive. So what she attempted to do,
Yeah.
when she called 911, she said, "Hey, can you send someone who's trained in dealing with mental health issues? Because my son has a mental health issues. I don't want you to just send any old regular cop. Can you please send somebody from someone who has mental health issues?" She's not understanding that 911 dispatcher.
No, they don't. This is the thing. People think the 911 dispatcher relays everything you say to the cops who show up. It's not happening.
Yeah, exactly.
It does not happen. And
Yes.
that's the danger. You think you're giving them all the information you possibly can to the dispatch. The dispatch is not going to necessarily relate all of those things
Right,
to
exactly.
the officer that arrives, as Nathan says, on the scene, has to make their own assessment, figure out what's
Yes.
going on, what's happening, who's the threat, who's not the threat, trying to go home to their kids, not used to where they're being posted anyway,
Exactly.
don't know the neighborhood, don't know the people.
So you know what happened? They sent the cop that was closest to the area.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't have no mental health training, probably. I mean, I don't know, but I doubt it. They probably sent the cop that was closest. And make a long story short, they gave him a couple commands, told him to,
Which he did not listen to, didn't comply with them,
because he has a mental health issue, and he ended up dying. So it was almost, the mom kind of unintentionally ordered. She kind of dialed the murder of her own son. It was real sad. And so
yeah, and I see you, Sergeant Claiborne, in the back.
Yeah, we keep talking about this, right? It all boils down to training. People keep saying, "Oh, that's not the only thing." I'm telling you right now, these two instances didn't make the media, but these poor people lost their lives because the police aren't properly trained. One, too much time in the streets. For every week that they spend on patrol dealing with stuff, they should have 3 weeks down, in my opinion, because you need to go to court, you need to do paperwork, and you need training. There should be a scheduled week. So you got a week on the street, you got a week for doing your paperwork, going to court, you got a week of training, right? And you just got a week, you got extra time. Like, all right, we're just gonna get you some, go to the schools and what they call that, PR work. Just go out and talk to folks and be nice.
No,
but
and I will say that too. You were making a great point about that mental health stress and being able to talk to people about what they deal with. They are also facing trauma. They are also day to day having this high, very stressful job where it's life or death when they show up. I get it. And what you're saying is true. They're human, as Nathan says too. They're going to make decisions based on
no,
Big Ben. And I'm gonna let Sergeant Claiborne get in. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you were actually in the middle of a point. Go ahead.
No, they are, and I work in law enforcement too, believe it or not. And so I
know what I'm talking about.
I know that's hard to believe, but so I really respect Nathan for his point. I just think he's understating the racial element and how unconscious bias can affect how white officers deal with black suspects, if you want to call them that. and I don't
or
really
citizens.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Citizens, and you know, I don't. I guess where I respectfully disagree is that the media is brainwashing us to have a certain. I mean, I get to a certain extent. We make judgments based on what we can see, but I mean, we all got the internet. I mean, this ain't 1984. I mean, we can kind of do our own. You know what I'm trying to say? We can kind of do our own research now. And I can see if this was the 80s, you know, but we got Google, we have the ability to do our own research.
Hold on, let
So
Officer
I'm not
Daley
gonna put
respond,
that,
and then Mr. Claiborne
I'm not
will
gonna just
get
put
in
that
there.
on. I'm not gonna
Please
just
go
put that on
ahead.
the
I
media.
see you smiling, sir. Go ahead.
So Big Ben, I want to appreciate you with the honest feedback. I do appreciate that.
Can y'all mute y'all phones, please? There's a little feedback. Go ahead.
Big Ben, I appreciate you and the feedback that you gave, and I do understand what you're saying in reference to. I can come off as if I'm not connecting the pieces in regards to, again, the historical setting, and then also the current settings as it relates to the KKK being a part of law enforcement. That is a fact. That's true, and I know it's true. I tell people all the time if that's the case, I also explain to people that not only is that true, but there are gangs, other white gangs that are in law enforcement. There are black gangs. There's Latino gangs. There are corrupt officers. There are criminals. There are pedophiles. There's anything you can imagine that's inside the profession. The problem is they're in the profession. The question is, how do you get them out? How do you filter the process properly? This should be the hardest job that anyone could ever get in this country. One of the hardest jobs, but it's not. They take you right out of high school with a GED in some places. So the problem is it's too easy to become a cop. They let everybody and their mama do it. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I've also seen black gang members have actually groomed individuals who had perfect criminal backgrounds, and they sent them through the academy, and they work for these gang members behind the scenes. So again, yes, are KKK the only threat? No, there's a lot of other bad people who have gotten into policing. That's a fact. The problem is this. We know what the problems are. I always tell people, what are you going to do about it? See, we can talk about what the issues are all day. I like to talk about solutions. I think when it comes to people saying I'm not incorporating the racial element or racism, that's absolutely not true. The reality is I know what our people are capable of. And again, I know that we're better than what we are doing in the moment. And so because of that, I put the onus on us to step up and do something about it. You can't complain about white supremacy and how bad white people are treating you, and then turn around and beg them to police you. Turn around and ask them to do the job for you. It doesn't work like that, right?
But you can't. Can I say something real quick?
Before you make that point, let me close with this.
Okay.
Because I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm saying there's a way to counter it. And we're not countering it. And also, I patrolled in a predominantly black community with a predominantly black police force. My experience is how black people are treating black police officers. I've seen it in real time.
Yes.
Again, the argument, yes, can be made that white officers are treating black people a certain way. Yes. What I'm saying is black people treat black officers this way as well. So where a lot of people see race, I see ignorance. Where a lot of people say this white officer is racist, I say he's racially insensitive. I'm not saying that there's not racist white people. I'm saying there are some white officers who don't care about 400 years ago. That doesn't make them a racist, but that does make them culturally and racially insensitive to the plight of a community. The reality is you can't expect other people to care more about your situation than your own people. So therefore, the onus is on us to step up and actually put ourselves in these positions in order to bring about the change and see the outcomes that we want to see. That is the only solution. Or you do like the Jewish community or the NOI and police yourself.
Well, one quick thing.
I gotta get Sergeant Claiborne. Go ahead, Big Ben.
I'm almost done. Now, when you talk about solutions, I think one of the solutions is, from what I see, and again, maybe the media does play a role in this. When white bad cops are, when you do find a white bad cop, it just seems like they're protected in the court system, and they beat those allegations more than black law enforcement officers. So if we get more equality in the court system when they get charged, I think that would go a long way as far as the solution.
Yes.
Okay,
I think
pause before you go in. Let me get Sergeant Claiborne. He's been sitting up here chilling. And I want to thank you. Sandy B. Law says one of the solutions is comprehensive reforms for police training and continuing education. How do we as civilians impact this type of change? But I'm going to thank you, Sandy B. Law. She did an excellent show with me. Watch it, right? Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman's estate. That was a good show. Y'all got a bunch of free legal advice, but y'all want to act like y'all don't want to watch the good shows and support the content. Go back and watch it. That was a $300 consultation with Sandy B. Law. You're welcome. So go back and watch it so you can understand what happens when people pass without a will. All right, you're welcome. All right, go ahead, Mr. Claiborne. How are you?
I'm good, Suzette. Great show.
Thank you.
And one thing I think that we're missing, because I'm military police officer, I've had that kind of training. I've never been a police officer on the street as a civilian, but I was a correctional sergeant for years. And I will say that what we're missing is what was the reason for the stop. That was the first thing. That was the absolute first thing that should have been put out. But could you, Nate, could you talk to us about a 00, or at least the 10 code 00, and what would be going through their minds when they hear that 00?
So everybody's 10 codes are different. So
okay,
what I don't know what their actual 10 code
00 in Alabama is officer needs all possible assistance.
Okay. Okay. So ours is different here in Georgia. So what goes on? So basically, what that code is, we have a code, an emergency code, basically means that we need help. I've had probably 4 of those in my entire career where I say, hey, this is what I need. I need, according to you, for Alabama, it's 00. If an officer makes that statement on the radio, everybody in law enforcement within a maybe several mile radius is going to drop everything they're doing and they're going to go and respond. That call is also used when an officer has been shot or severely in danger. Everybody is going to show up. Even federal agents that are working in undercover capacity, they are showing up. In my incident that almost got me killed, I've had 3 other situations where someone attempted to take my life, where I was struggling a firearm out of someone's hands. I used that code, according to you, a 00 for Alabama. I used that code, and everybody in the area came to basically to try to help and prevent and protect me and whoever other officer was at the scene. That is a code of response of it's absolute emergency. Drop everything you're doing. An officer's life is in danger. That's exactly what that means, and it's only used in extreme emergencies.
Okay, thank you. I muted everybody because I was getting a little bit of a package, so y'all can unmute.
Hey, Suzette, when you guys get to the part,
thank you to Rob B. A privilege. Thank you so much. Just showing some love. I appreciate you being over here, and the wonderful super chat saying just showing love and support. Hey, Suzette, beautiful, you're very kind, as well as hello, Nathan, and showing love on the super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. I just want to do a quick reset. Y'all act like we're gonna be here all night, and I love it. So let's go again. SuzetteSpeaks was about to hit it in, but we going strong. So special guest, real Nathan Daley. I'm so glad you said yes and was able to come on tonight to talk about these 2 cases. Right now, we're talking about the Jayland Walker horrific shooting. Real Officer Daley has already broken down a lot of the play-by-play. If you're just joining, go ahead and hit the like button, show some love, subscribe. We really want you to do that. We have the panel now. We've talked about some of the facts, other things I wanted to bring up. I just wanted to show his family real quick. I didn't show the picture of the mom and the grandma and all of these people crying. I decided not to include that in the slideshow. But I'm going to humanize people because they were real in real life, right? This man had no record, right? I'm looking at him. I'm seeing my brother. I'm seeing my cousin. I'm seeing my people. And although Real Nathan Daley will tell me, don't get into my emotions about it. I still believe that, that pain that the family has experienced is real. If it's your son, if it's your brother, if it's your husband, if it's your baby daddy, whatever it is, it has this pain that seems to indicate a lesser value of life than for other citizens. And again, that can be argued. I can hear, both sides to it. This gentleman is I believe the Akron police chief gave a statement, and I want Nathan to address that before we head out. But yeah, there's a lot more to be said about this case. This is just now what we have emerging, and we're going to stay on top of it. And again, if you want a wonderful step-by-step deep case primer, go watch Real Nathan Daley's take on this case. We're going to give you more about, what we believe in terms of solutions, etc. But he went step by step on his channel. So go subscribe. And I appreciate it. I got a bunch of new subscribers tonight. Y'all feeling this? Oh, okay. All right. We might have to do some more of this. Let me bring the panel back up, and we're going to talk for a little bit more. And thank you, Big Ben. I think okay, everybody's back. Okay, perfect. Nathan, you go first.
Yeah. I want to respond to I think it was I think it might have been Big Ben. He made the comment in reference to our community, just in reference to, we're not the dominant society. So white people are the dominant society, meaning their hands are in a little bit of, they're in everything, right? In all professions. When we talk about the solutions and we talk about how police have an unfair advantage, and you made a point and you said, okay, it seems like white officers get off. I'm here to tell you, it's not just the white officers. It's the black officers too. It's very, very difficult to convict an officer of wrongdoing. Period. And so it's not, you see the white officers.
First of all, to bring the charge.
First of all, yes. And there's reasons for that. I believe honestly, we've coddled law enforcement in this country. We've given them too much excuses. We've handicapped them. And when you handicap a person, they don't try harder to do better. And that's one of the biggest issues I've seen with law enforcement. And I'm saying this because I held myself to high standards along with other people that I worked with. And so when I see a lot of this subpar standard that in law enforcement now, it does anger me because I know that we can do better. I know that we're capable of doing better, but we are being handicapped by society because we are society's precious peacekeepers, as they like to put it. I will say this, though, the challenge is here. If we're talking about police are not being held accountable by the system, then we have to look at who's actually in the system. And we look at attorneys, and shout out to Suzette. She's a lovely attorney. Shout out to TLA. These are the closest attorneys that I know. They are African-American attorneys. According to the Bar Association, the American Bar Association, only 5% of the attorneys in this country are African-American. That's not because people are forcing them not to be attorneys. We only represent 5%. So again, if there's only 5% of the attorneys in this country are black, how many of the attorneys are actually judges that are black, right? So when we start looking at where we are and where we are not, we need to start grooming our people and making these professions more attractive for us to be in so that we can influence the system. You can't do it on the outside without doing it through a politician. And if we're not doing that properly, we're definitely not getting anything. When it comes to police, only 12% of law enforcement in this country are African-American out of 700,000 police officers. And that number is drastically dropping because officers are quitting, right? They're leaving a lot of these major cities because of the law and politicians. So again, I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying it's not accurate because we're not where we need to be in order to make change where it matters most. And I think that's the conversation that we need to have.
I understand. DL, you were waiting to say something. Go ahead, DL. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, my bad. Here we go. So we were talking about solutions, and I wrote a few down while we were, while I was sitting here, and I don't expect it to happen tomorrow. But one of the first things I would do as far as solutions, stop that military look in law enforcement. Nothing makes me more angry than seeing some fat cop walking around like he's geared up, like he's tip of the spear. These police officers have no idea what it takes just to be airborne. Just that, let alone, a Green Beret. let alone being a SEAL, let alone being, you know, a recon Marine. That takes a lot of work, hard work, dedication. That's the first thing. Stop the military look. They don't need to look like soldiers. They ain't soldiers. They're cops, and a lot of them are cowardly cops. We're gonna keep it 100. They're poorly trained and they're scared. There should be an 80% washout rate for training. 80% of people should wash out trying to be police officers, for real.
I agree.
You know what I mean? The pay should be $100,000 minimum anywhere in the country. If you're wearing that badge, that shield, whatever you want to call it, you should be getting paid a minimum of $100,000. There should be federal funds made available for that. There should be 3 weeks of downtime for every week you spend on the street. 3 weeks of downtime. You need that time, again, to do paperwork, to go to court, right? And for training. 3 weeks of downtime. And we should hold cops accountable. There should be more internal affairs police officers, no kangaroo court. Like if you got a police officer whose name keeps coming up because of wrong,
they just moved to a new state, darling. They just go to another state,
and that would go into the training. Once you are removed from one police department, that's it. You should have to get a federal license to be a cop anywhere in America. And once you are removed from one police department, that license is taken away from you. You just can't go to Mayberry and become the sheriff down there. That should be.
You think there's a reason why we don't keep track of a national registry or have some kind of licensure? If we're all talking about how difficult this is and how stressfully, just very overwhelming types of police positions there are, and we need to focus on mental health. We need to. It sounds like I would call it like a white collar police force is what you're advocating for.
You want it more. You want a professional police force. You want it more.
That sounds like the FBI, honestly.
Right.
But
you think about it. Who do we have protecting? Like the Secret Service is supposed to go out and look for counterfeiters, but they also have their detail where they keep the president safe. Do you want a guy who's making $15 an hour, $12 an hour, keeping the president of the United States safe? So you get what you pay for. And the final thing I was going to say is, and this is for everyone. Thank you so much for the engagement, y'all. You know, I'm a YouTuber too. It's hard coming up here. Normally I show my face, but I'm at home. Family emergency. I'm sitting somewhere else. I don't want to show where I am. But the thing is this: people need to get involved. Jumping on Suzette Speaks or DL Saint's YouTube channel and talking crazy isn't enough. We want the engagement, but how about you go down to City Hall? How about you go down to the police department? How about you go down there and make inroads with law enforcement? They're not cyborgs. If they know you, they're gonna come to you in the streets because they know they need help. If you have
the boards, the advisory boards,
not just BS neither, like the real deal. Like, you know, tell the cops, I'm not gonna come to you. You can't come to me just so you can make your arrest, but come over here and ask me how the kids are doing. We see the videos of the cops double dutching with kids. You need more of that. You need more of that. So people, y'all got to get involved politically. Look at when you go and you vote for judges. These same judges are the ones who refuse to prosecute the police officers. You need to get involved, y'all.
They're very close in terms of their working relationship. Yeah.
This is a very.
You're great state attorneys. I know many, so I don't want to say that everybody's just.
I got family in that business, but
it's accountable. Yeah.
It's very difficult what we're talking about here. I don't want people to think that I'm siding on one way or the other. I'm just letting y'all know the situation on the ground is horrible. If this were a firefight, right, I wouldn't like our position. Like, I'm sorry. We need to make some changes and some adjustments so we can fix this problem for all Americans. I don't care about percentages. You know, 1,100 people who get murdered by police officers or shot by police officers is too many. And I bet you the cops will agree. Like, yeah, we don't want to shoot. If you got cops out there who are shooting multiple people, they need to go. Like, why are you firing?
I'm talking about incident after incident after incident. We've had several here recently in Miami. When you look at the track record, you're like, and this person still had a job. Why? Who they know? Who looks out for them? It's a brother and sisterhood, but it's real. Quincy, nice to see you. Says, hence community policing. You asked a question: would I ever be a judge? Heck no, I would never. Judges are muzzled. Once you become a judge and you're on that bench, you can't make really a comment about anything because you have to be seen as neutral. So you got to be so careful with your public opinions. Hence, hello, this is what I do. I think that would almost be like, we don't know, torture.
Maybe Suzette Can't Speak show. No more Suzette Speaks.
That would be a horrible show. But Suzette, so for what I love to do, no. But sometimes in the mindset, I'd be like, sometimes I'm in court like, oh my God. But no, I wouldn't want that as a job.
But Suzette, do you agree we do need more black judges,
We
right?
need definitely more black cops, more black attorneys, more black
Yep.
judges. 100%. One of the big things with our political forums down here, I'm a part of and stuff. We advocate. We make sure we get a slate together. We encourage people to run. We encourage people, to mentor up with the people who have run before. Like we are having, a so-called, like say there's, I don't know how many right now in Miami-Dade, 200 local judges. We are exploding because now we have 10 black ones or something
Right.
crazy like that.
But
So we're
but
like,
Suzette
we've made
also.
progress, but it's crazy.
But here's the thing: the amount of people of color on the bench or in these higher levels in the prosecutor's office or in law enforcement, if there are the people who agree with the current system, nothing to change. I don't want just more cops. I
Oh
want a
no, no,
dude
no.
who
We
grew
gotta
up
have
on
the right
Glenwood.
mindset.
Right. I
100%.
want a guy who grew up on my block. I want a dude who grew up in Glenwood, right, in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Avondale. I want him to be a police officer if he qualifies. I don't want some kid who grew up in the suburbs just simply because he's black. He
Well,
looks like me.
the personality test they got to give people, we're going to add that to it because that type of profile, that mental profile, personality profile is just as important as the temperance, squeaky clean, if you will, record. Which again, not everybody may have that from the family point perspective because that's what they use to keep out certain people. Down here,
Exactly.
South Florida, several police departments have been accused of, good old boy clubs. We are in majority counties where I live, and still the police officers are like majority whites. And we're
Mhm.
like, wait a minute. And we've had even a sheriff over in Broward County talk about that. He's like, people were disqualified because of their accents. My people got accents. And saying that they couldn't give clear commands and things like this by prior sheriffs. You understand? So
Right.
there
But
goes
Officer
There goes
Hernandez got right
systemic.
in. Officer
Pardon me?
Hernandez got right in with that accent. Nothing. That's not a slight towards the Hispanic community, but it just
No,
goes to show.
exactly. It depends on whose accent, right? So
Right.
again, that's a deeper issue. But again, black folks with accents, I know so many men got turned away from when they emigrated here and tried to get in the police department. It was so we all were like, okay, that's not what they think what it's supposed to be. We knew,
But Brother
cousins.
Nathan, what would your top 5 fixes be?
So the things that you touched on, I agree with. But I've actually have a list. So the things that you said were definitely spot on. But of course, I formulated to make it practical for policing, right? When you made the comment first about police should not look like the military, I agree. I mean mainly you see that with SWAT. The issue with
No,
the
but a lot of
uniform.
police departments have been inheriting a lot of leftover military equipment.
But
Yep.
that's actually a known thing that the feds give their unused equipment to law enforcement to
I
do
don't
the
think they
job.
should do that. I don't think they
They
should do that.
absolutely have to do it because
Why?
unfortunately, you are dealing with some offenders in the community that have equipment that mimics the military. They have ways to barricade themselves. So there is a certain level. There are equipment that is needed for law enforcement in order for them to do their job properly. The problem with law enforcement, honestly, is just the abuse of power and not being held accountable. A tool is just a tool. And DL will tell you this. A tool is a tool. A tool that's used and it's not checked properly, there's no checks and balances, is going to be left to be out of control. The problem with law enforcement as it sets today, regardless of skin color, the ego is a big issue. And it's because the position, law enforcement has been created in a way to where I don't have to earn your respect, right? My uniform itself garners the respect, even if I'm not a respectable person. So that has to change, right? Every officer should be earning the respect of a person that they come in contact with. How do you do that? You have to make it so that the citizens have power again. Right now, the citizens don't have power over law enforcement whatsoever. It's almost as if the citizens have become subservient to the police because we have incentivized bad behavior in law enforcement, right? It's the officer's word is taken over the citizen, regardless of what proof the citizen has. A lot of times, again, we've handicapped police officers to a point to where now they have become our worst enemy per se. The issue is officers don't have to earn the respect of the citizens that they encounter. That needs to be changed to where a citizen the relationship an officer has with a citizen will directly reflect that officer's pay, directly reflect the officer's ability to rank up. I also believe that officers need to be rated by the citizens based off their encounters, and officers' pay and their rank and promotions should be judged based off their community works in the community. So then now,
Nathan, let me stop you.
Mm-hmm.
So you think all citizens are subservient to the officers? All race of citizens?
No, what I'm saying is this: there's a power dynamic within law enforcement where police officers don't respect the people they are serving. And so I'm saying it's ego driven. It's not necessarily, it's perception. It has nothing to do with skin color. And in this perspective that I'm speaking of, I'm just talking about the ego that a lot of officers have that get them in trouble, because your job is to serve this person, yet you're looking at yourself as a superior to this person. And that is a problem. It's a mentality. That mentality has been cultivated and it's become part of the police culture since the beginning of time. When you put that uniform on, you become a new person. That's not how it should be. You should always be the same person. Unfortunately, you have some officers that police and enforce the law through their ego. That's the issue. A tool, again, is just a tool. The person using the tool is the problem. The problem is the mentality. How do you fix the mentality? Well, you have to hold them accountable. You have to punish bad behavior. And that's not really being done in the profession. This is the reason why it goes on so long, because officers are not really being held accountable when they do things that are counterproductive to the profession. So what do I say? You have to incentivize it. Right now, bad behavior you're not being disciplined for it. So why would it be corrected? So how do you do that? To his point about officers jumping from place to place, I agree with him. You have to fix qualified immunity. I would insure officers. Officers need to have their own insurance, their own police insurance to practice law enforcement. Just like you, Suzette, you have a license. Police officers should have a license, and it should be a nationwide license. You have to then be insured, say by like Allstate or Geico, right? You have $1 million policy.
You have to have insurance, yeah.
And so you have to have malpractice insurance, right? So as an officer, you should have malpractice insurance. This is how you circumvent.
There'll be a lot of insurance companies out of business.
Well, the union would pay for that, would it? When the union just covered it?
Not if everybody was having to make claims every other day.
Well, but then the whole point is, guess you have to, when you solve problems, so that's what I was tasked to do for my job, is they gave me problems, I solved them. This is a problem. The problem is taxpayers are blowing money because of police misconduct, right? It's $1 billion thing. How do you stop that? You got to give the citizens something to vote for. Hey, you get to keep your tax dollars, because now the police are being insured by private insurance companies, right? You can have the unions, you can have the police departments, they can put in maybe 20%, and the officer puts in the other 20% or whatever till you get to 100% as far as coverage. The officer has to cover himself and his insurance to keep his license. If he does not pay it, or if it's not paid, or if he's dropped from his insurance, he loses his license. If he loses his license, he cannot patrol or police nationwide. It doesn't matter. That's how you stop the bunny hopping from police department to police department. And that's how you circumvent around qualified immunity. That gives citizens a right to civilly sue an officer who violates their constitutional rights.
You think we'd have police officers left if this was the system?
The thing is, we have to reimagine policing. Yeah, we will have the best and the brightest. Why? Because like DL said, you'll be paying them properly. You have to then entice officers to want to do this job. You're paying them $100,000. You're paying them 6 figures to do a dangerous job. You're insuring them. They have license. They now have to be mindful of how they conduct themselves, because if they get sued once or twice, they lose their license. They got no job. They got no job. So again, do you love your ego, right? Do you love being a racist? Do you love being an asshole more than you love your paycheck? More than you love your job? More than you love sending your kids to college? Again, you have to incentivize good behavior. And there is no incentive to be good in this modern policing world. That's why you have a lot of cops quitting, because they're like, you're paying me trash. I got to deal with all the rhetoric. I got to deal with the politics. I got to deal with the BS. hell, if you're a black officer, you got to deal with being isolated and exiled from your own community, right?
You got to deal with kind of trying to blend in. Nathan, I'm gonna give you the last word. People looking like they're about to fall asleep up here. I'm gonna let everybody get any last comments and some feedback. Again, wonderful discussion. So much. We might have to do a part 2. Nathan, you know I love collaborating with you because you bring such a wealth of knowledge and expertise. So I'm going to start with Sergeant Claiborne. Would you give us your final comments on, maybe how we can improve from here, the case itself, things you want people to remember, or just, focus on before you head out? You can unmute yourself. Sorry, I muted everybody because we're getting background noise. DL, I'm going to mute you.
Sure, it's no problem. Yeah, I got my master's from the University of Akron. So I'm familiar with Akron, Ohio. I've done ride-alongs with the Akron Police Department. I'm familiar with it. But what I want to say has to do with all police departments. Do police really have an understanding of what they're supposed to do? I don't think so. I don't think that their mission is clear. Like with the cases that we've had in Florida, where you are, the cases in Texas, it's clear that police don't have to do certain things. So I think fundamentally, before you talk about improving anything, changing anything, the problems, you have to say, do they understand what their mission is? Is there a clear understanding of what their job is? And I don't think that there's a clear understanding of what the role is. And number 2, y'all were talking about black police officers. Black police officers don't necessarily help black people, because there's this racism thing is permeated through our society. We're not immune from it. I've seen it in my department with the Department of Corrections. A lieutenant happened to use excessive force and he killed an inmate. But guess what? It was a black lieutenant. It was a black inmate. So while there was some feedback from the media, not much, because that's not what is looked at. And our problem is not a black problem. It's not a white problem. It's a police problem. And we have to look at it like that, because a lot of times we don't key in on the problems that we cause each other, and we do cause each other problems. So when we look at issues like this and we just say, oh, it's one way, we're not looking at the whole, we're not looking at the totality of the problem. But before we solve anything else, we got to figure out what police are supposed to be doing in the first place. Are they supposed to be serving the citizens, serving their constitutional rights? Because in the last 2 years, we've seen that the policing has changed, and it's not so much serving the constitutional rights of the citizens. It's serving the curfews, serving all these things that we've had, and it's really not enhancing the constitutional rights of the citizens. So what's the purpose? So we have to have a comprehensive understanding of what's the purpose. Why are you doing the job? What is the job? Because we would think that the job is to protect elementary school kids. You know, I've got 2 daughters. One of them is in elementary school, but the Supreme Court has said you don't have to risk your life. The only thing you have to do as a police officer is protect people that are in your custody, meaning that you've arrested. And that's the side that I was on. You know, we had a responsibility to protect people, but police don't have that same responsibility. Some of the things that Officer Nathan...
Let me speak to that real quick. In reference to, I think, to your point, you're absolutely correct. We need to redefine what it means to be law enforcement in this country. I think there's been a gross misunderstanding. People say protect and serve. I say law enforcement. That's our objective, is to enforce the law. Somehow the marketing and propaganda in this country is very good at propaganda, has changed this thing and made it out to be something that it really isn't. And that's why the citizens are so confused when they don't see officers doing things. You get what I'm saying? They're confused, right?
Yeah, but the cops are confused also. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, there's a problem there. Both sides are confused. Both sides are confused. What I'm saying is the citizens have an expectation and a standard that officers are not living up to, and they don't understand why. And I'm here to tell you guys, because it's not what you think it is, right? I'm here to bring clarity to it. It's not all bells and whistles and Skittles and rainbows. It's not. A lot of these people in this profession are not good at the job. And so how serious, again, to your point, we have to get to a point in a conversation. We say, how serious do we value the lives of the citizens and the service that we expect the citizens to have be carried out by our public service men and women?
I would say none. Like in my city, I'm in Montgomery, right? This is the city that's when Rosa Parks was arrested, right above my head. And later that cop became the police chief for Montgomery, Alabama, when she was booked right there. But in this city, the cops were telling people that they couldn't go to Walmart. Only a certain amount of people could go. This COVID thing went completely off the rails.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, what is their role? If they don't understand their role, how's anybody, what are they supposed to do? Because when I was a kid, I thought cops were supposed to help you, but that's not the case.
Well, and I would say this, though. I would argue that every police department's not created equal. Every police department does not operate the same, and every police officer is not the same. So we also have to make sure we bring that in context as well. Because to your point, during COVID, you had some officers who refused to enforce mask mandates. They said that's not we don't have the right to do that to anybody. So again, there are some people who understand the law and they respect the Constitution. And so again, these lines get blurred in these emergency situations, or when you have politicians who are overstepping. So there's nuances to this issue. The reality that we can both agree on is that we need the standards to raise to the expectation that society is asking them to be at. If you
there can be no standards if you don't know what you're supposed to do.
Regardless, I'm saying, regardless of who knows what, the standards of the people serving the people, the officers who are serving the public need to rise to the standards that the public sets. Regardless.
Are they serving the public? Or are they oppressing the public?
You're missing the statement. You're missing it. You're overthinking it. I'm saying the police force, the profession, needs to raise the standards to where society expects them to be. Whatever and however that looks like. Don't overthink it. Do you hear what I'm saying?
No. That's no. Because society expects, if some 3rd and 4th graders are getting killed, society expects somebody with a vest, somebody with training, somebody who's been taking shots standing, taking shots kneeling, that's had annual training, that's been for 12 weeks at the academy to grab onto their sack and go in there and confront that shooter.
Did you hear what I said?
No, I want you to hear what I'm saying.
No, you're not listening.
I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and went to MP school.
Sorry, you're not listening. You're being emotional. Listen what I'm saying.
No, brother. I'm not being emotional at all.
Listen what I'm saying. Listen what I'm saying.
I'm not being emotional at all.
Listen what I'm saying. You're missing what I'm saying. You're making an emotional argument. I said
no, I'm not making an emotional argument.
Okay, well, hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. And you tell me what I
Hold on. No, sir. That's the standard that's been there since Columbine, since 1999.
What did I just say?
That's the doctrine.
What I said was, okay, what I said was policing, the profession, needs to rise to the standard and expectation that society is demanding them to be at. Right now,
I already told you that's the standard. If little kids are getting shot, you don't stand outside for 20 minutes. You confront the shooter.
And you're saying that's society. And you're telling me that's the standard society wants. Is that what you're?
Yes, that's what society wants.
That's not what society wants, sir.
So society doesn't want police officers to protect elementary school kids that are getting shot.
I think you misunderstand what I'm saying. You're making an emotional argument, but I
no,
hear what
sir.
you're trying to say.
You keep on saying that. I don't know why, because I've said that so I don't know why you keep saying that.
The point
that's not true. You asked me what society expects, and I'm telling you what society expects. Okay, society expected Just like in Florida, when
what does
the
society
school
expect?
Society expects police officers to give aid when children are under attack.
All right, okay, pause. And I just said that policing, the profession, needs to rise to the expectation that society has for police officers. Does that not make sense? I'm saying that policing is below the expectation that society is asking them
Of
to be.
course it is. That's what I'm saying. But you keep saying that I'm saying an emotional argument.
No,
and
we're
this
saying
is
saying you're not listening.
That's good.
Since 99 for over 20 years.
All right, cool. You good, brother. You good. You rewind it back.
We're I think we're in the same kind of ball field. I think there's nuance. So I'm going to leave it there, Sergeant. I'm going to bring up my other two guests just because it's getting late, but your point is well taken. I think people can hear loud and clear, and this is wonderful that we can put it out there for others to ingest and decide. So both of your points, like I say, I hear it loud and clear, and I don't think we're going to be agreeable. We could be agreeable without, agreement. Let's say it that way. So thank you again, Sergeant Claiborne, for coming on tonight. I'm going to bring up Big Ben for his final comments, and then DL, and then, of course, real Nathan Daley will give the final comments of the night. Thank you so much for coming up. I know it's late where you are as well, so we're going to wrap up our conversation, maybe make this a part 2. Y'all come on Saturday at 12 noon. I'm going to be talking about y'all don't want to see the picture, though. I'm going to put the picture up just because I'm not doing it for salaciousness, but this is the real picture. Okay, yep, that's Saturday. Tierra Mack. This is the same woman. Both of these people. These are the same women. Yes, they are. And we're going to talk about respectability and politics, as well as respectability politics on Saturday at 12 noon. Next episode of the SuzetteSpeaks show. All right, final word. Go ahead. Thank you, Big Ben. You're muted. Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Thanks again, Nathan, for coming on the show. I think the best point that you made all night, in my opinion, was the talk about the qualified immunity and getting personal insurance.
Yep.
I think as far as solution based and accountability, just like malpractice insurance for doctors
and attorneys
and attorneys. So if we were to implement that, like you spoke of, as far as having the license and you have to maintain the insurance,
yep, then
I think people would not be handicapped, like you mentioned.
Yep.
When you overprotect the officers, they can kind of become handicapped.
Yes, that's exactly what the problem is.
So shout out to you for bringing that up. I actually was going to bring up that point, but you brought it up, and I think from a solution standpoint, accountability has to be part of the equation, and I think that's something that we need to shoot for as far as accountability. I think is a major part of the solution in policing. So shout out
accountability of law enforcement, or accountability of individuals in the community as well, or
no, what I mean accountability is the point that he brought about insurance.
If that would be officer accountability. Gotcha. Just wanted to clarify. Gotcha.
The officer accountability, and if you got rid of a qualified immunity and all officers had to maintain insurance, I think they would think twice about how they interact or the decisions they make if they know that they're going to personally be held accountable. So shout out to Nathan for bringing that point up.
All right, Big Ben. Well, thank you for being a part of tonight's discussion. Thank you so much. You're always welcome up here, and thank you for adding significantly to what our difficult subject matter was tonight. So thank you, Big Ben. I'll see you soon. Okay. Good night. Thank you. And next we have DL Saint. Thank you, DL, for coming through. What are your final thoughts tonight?
Thanks for having me. Shout out to you, Suzette. When you told me you're doing it, I'm like, ooh, that's going to be a good one. I'm glad. Thank you for having me on, brother Nathan. For real, the fact that you're here, showing your face, right, in a public forum, telling the truth to your, to the best you can. I agree with almost 80% of what you're saying, bro.
Thank you.
I'm with you 100%. I know a lot of police officers. I can't get a single one of them to speak up, even though they know that there's problems in the force. But anyway, thank you for that. My final thought would be this. I truly believe, I always harp on this, training is the key. I think training would be 75 to 80% of this effective training. I'm not talking about what's going on now. I'm talking effective training. And my biggest thing, my own personal one, I would love to see is a PT standard that they hold.
Yes.
I'm sick of seeing fat cops who can't get in and out of
Yes.
the car. They can't run 3 steps, let alone a block with all that equipment on. And when they gear up, nothing boils my blood more than seeing these guys putting on gear that I had to bust my ass to be able to wear. These guys are just putting on this gear, walking around, and they like, they Billy Badass or
You know
somebody.
why? You know why though? Real quick.
Why is that?
We had officers that sued police departments for making health mandates for them, PT standards. Make that make sense. That's what you're dealing with, right? So
Yep.
you can
That shows
sue.
that the union is strong.
Well, every police department doesn't have a union. So here in the South, there's no union for the cops. In Georgia, there's not. So
Really?
so it's people have a right, because now you're discriminating, right? Now, Suzette, this is your territory.
I'm listening and I'm like cringing, but go ahead. Yes.
But this is your territory, Suzette. When people say, "Hey, I was discriminated against because I'm a fat ass at my job, and they don't want to give me a pay raise, or they're not going to give me the job because I'm overweight." Guess who they call? They call Suzette, and guess what happens? Suzette writes a nice little email.
We're gonna send a demand letter, and we're gonna figure this out.
And guess what? That fat ass is back on the job. He got a job. He's wearing a badge. And now the citizens are impacted behind that. Why is that a problem? Because just the way you could say that's discrimination for overweight, you could say the same thing about somebody's height, right? You could say the same thing about someone's physical build. Hey, this woman is 5'2". Why should she be a cop? Well, you discriminated against her because of her height and her gender, right? And so police departments stay away from that, which I disagree with. But the problem is this: it leaves room for people to use discriminatory practices, and they can abuse it and say, "Well, what are your thoughts?" That's your area.
No, I just remember some legal doctrine, and I'm again, it's probably too late at night. We at midnight, y'all, East Coast. So I'm trying to think of that made me think about 2 or 3 cases from law school, because I don't practice, employment law, so to speak, or oh God, I can't think of it.
But for the sake of the
principle being, there are caveats sometimes, and I don't know, and I can't remember the exact case law. When, for example, what we're talking about now, I don't know what you just said about policing. I know, for example, firefighters has been fought, right? They have to be doing, a certain amount of sit-ups and push-ups, and can women have the upper body strength to do these things? Right. And I remember, and I cannot remember the name of the case. That's why I was like, okay, that says that there are permissible, I don't know if it could be required, but permissible standards because of the activity that a firefighter or a police officer, etc., must do. But I hear you, and I'm not familiar enough with the case law on people countersuing and say, you discriminate against me because I weigh this much. But there are standards, of course, but people will wake up, because it's America and we're a litigious society, and say, no, I'm going to get this paycheck though, and you're going to pay me for discrimination, right? So I can't go into it in depth. I don't think my mind has the clarity at this hour, but I know what you're saying. I'm going to read this super chat. She's been patient and she's been busy. Justice 1999 on the super says, cops don't improve our communities. Force your local governments to put their monstrous military budgets towards community health needs. Much love, beautiful sister Suzette. Thank you. Justice for Elijah McClain. Thank you.
$786 billion is what we spend on our military every single year. Yeah. $786 billion.
Well, hold on. I got one for you too, though. The military spends $700 billion a year on average, and Black people spent $1.6 trillion last year. We got money, people. We just spend it in areas that probably aren't really productive for our community. So we spent more than the military last year. So what does that say? So to Justice, her response, I hear you.
I'm calling her, but it could be Jesse. But I just said Jesse.
It could be Jesse. According to that super chat, I hear what you're saying. Yes, the military budget is vast. They can cut off $1 billion or so. The president that a lot of people voted for in this chat right now, Biden, he threw a couple billion over to Ukraine. So
clean
again,
money. And I'm just saying, dang, how we got all this money to give away and we can't do it for.
And we still asking for reparations, right? And so again, this is the person you voted for. So politics matters. If we don't put our mind and our attention and focus on the things that impact our community, then of course we're going to be continue to complain about these things. And the police issue is a local issue, not a federal issue. And so you need to make sure you're voting locally and active locally for your sheriffs, your judges, and your representatives. And so again, I go to Black community meetings in the Black community all the time for police stuff, you guys, and we're not present. So again, you guys got to miss me with a lot of this hoorah stuff y'all are singing, because we do not show up.
No dust. We about to.
All right. I gotta leave them with that, because we act like we so active. We act like we so active, and it's not true.
Yeah.
You want other people to care more about our stuff than us. It doesn't work. We got to do the work, you guys. Nobody else.
We got to show up. We got to register. We got to support the right people. We got to hold people accountable, vote them out if they're not doing what they're doing. Figure out who the judges are. Actually vote for judges with clean records. Figure, read the op-eds in the paper or online and figure out who really stands for what. Watch political forums, and listen to people. Are they competent? Do they actually have the experience? Are they in la la land? And totally opposite of where you stand on certain issues. So
are they twerking on their
Jesus, you don't want to twerk. You don't want to twerk a twerk. What's her name? Tiara the twerker. Lot of mercy.
Is that who y'all voted for? Is that who you voted for?
That's Rhode Island. That's Rhode Island.
Sorry, I stole this. I have to give credit for the breakdown of women's perspective. This was the picture from their Instagram. I didn't have time to kind of make my own collage. Shout out to the breakdown of women's perspective. So this is where this picture came from. I did not originate the smiley face. Thank God for the smiley face.
But
Saturday show, 12 noon, we'll be discussing the
no autopsy. That's the problem.
Heard around the world, and whether Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack is within her. I don't know if the word is right.
Yeah, she's within her right to do it. It's tacky, it's unprofessional, and it's grossly disrespectful to the Black image, the collective image
for her office. If it's you and your girls on a turn up, you send it to the group chat. Why did you put this on TikTok? Like, I just don't understand why this was on TikTok. Like, again, that's Saturday's discussion, y'all. Saturday 12 noon. It'll just be me and an open panel, so you guys will be able to come up and talk about what you think when it comes to respectability and politics. So that's Saturday's show. Final thoughts, DL, were you finished? Go ahead, wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out to everybody in the chat tonight. Big Ben who jumped up, cuz Jess, like, the passion that y'all are giving right now is the passion we need in the police precincts, in City Hall. We need that in the, don't just go to vote for the national ticket. Go to every election, the special elections. Go to all of them, vote, encourage other people to vote, because it is local. That's the only way we're going to change it. You notice we're not talking about the FBI. We're not talking about ATF or whoever they are now. We're not talking about the feds. We're talking about local law enforcement. So people, please get out there, get active. Say what you want about the people who are brave enough to show their faces. Come to if you want to see my face, I'll be on Sunday.
Drop the link. RM or Sunbreeze, please drop DL Saints channel. He's always a wonderful supporter over there on the red pill side, but still so sensible, so kind of open. I wouldn't even characterize him as just red pill. But I'm saying just, but that he only does that kind of content, but he's very broad, lots of experience, lots of life experience. So thank you, DL, as always.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Nathan, don't go nowhere. You're supposed to do the
closing. I'm not. I'm
about to say closing. Nathan on the phone. Now Nathan gone again. Well, thank you, Nathan. And shout out to It's All Hot Air. It says, I just shared the video. Look at that. If you can't donate, you can share. You can subscribe. You can hold a sister up. Thank you. Hold the content up and promote it for other people to see. Thank you so much. We do this for the love, but we also do this to make an impact, right? And I appreciate that so very much. All my new subscribers, thank you and welcome. I hope you will join me. Like I say, Saturday, I ain't putting up the picture no more. This is the twerk heard around the world. I'm tired of looking at this lady backside. But yes, this is the same woman, the dignified and so respectable looking lady on the left.
I believe
she's the one that put it out here. I'm not creating a story about her. She put this around and then told us why you worried about it. And then tweeted some. So I'm gonna cut the tweets and put them up here and see what y'all think about her freedom as a state senator from Rhode Island to switch on vacation mode and go on her, as Jamaicans would say, her head top, not the top head, go on our head top, and get a people an eyeful. I was shocked when I saw it. So anything again that evokes that type of reaction for me, I'm like, yeah, that's show material. We're gonna discuss this. So Saturday, 12 noon, y'all know I go live mostly Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Next week it'll be Monday. I have Mr. Andre Hatchett coming through. Dating as a high value man. Interesting topic. Dating as. I was like, okay, Andre, I ain't even get to vet you, bruh. But you gonna tell him how to date as a he didn't hesitate for the topic. I was like, okay, you got this. And then I also have is it next week? I have Orlando Minor. I got a full. Do I have an Orlando Minor next week? The real estate guru. Let me look at my calendar real quick so I can tell you the right thing. Monday I have Andre Hatchett. Tuesday. Oh no, the following week I have Orlando. Tuesday I'll be over on Gray Pill Podcast with Shushu. Shamaria does a women's panel over on the Gray Pill Podcast. If you guys didn't watch my show Pretty Privilege from Saturday, the Gray Pill Podcast, we broke down, do men have pretty privilege? I said yes, absolutely. And we did some work talking about R. Kelly and where the Aura had his pretty privilege revoked. I'm telling you, I think that had a part of his lengthy, drawn out process of finally getting a conviction. But I will be over on Gray Pill. And then Wednesday, I will have Ezra, the insurance broker. So we do work over here at least probably about 3 times a week. I'm live. So hit the notification bell. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Before we go, Nathan, I want you to have the last word. This was a very intense discussion tonight about both this gentleman here. Y'all do more research. Like I said, this story is not going to die down at all. They're going to follow him for sure. Again, welcome to all the new subs. And again, thank you for helping me do the work with regards to Jayland tonight, because I know you were so much more familiar with that case. And again, for a deep dive, go to Nathan's channel and watch the show he did on Jayland. But what are your final thoughts, sir, when it comes to both cases, if you will, tonight?
First, I want to say thank you to everybody. I know this was a very intense conversation. Shout out to everybody who came up to support. Thank you for being patient. We have a bad storm out here, so the power has been going on and off, so I lost internet connection. So thank you for being patient. In reference to my closing statements, in reference to the mass shootings, you guys, I think this is something that's only going to get worse. On average, you guys, over the last 3 years, we've had 600 plus mass shootings in this country. So it is a problem. Gun violence is a huge problem in this country. A lot of deaths are carried out with the handgun. So we know that to be true. I think instead of, we also need to look at how do we protect ourselves from these mass shootings when they happen. Do we have certain things in place? Are we protecting ourselves? Do you carry a firearm? Are you proficient with it? We need to have conversation on how to protect yourself, how to defend yourself. If you are in a position such as this, it's not safe anywhere in this country, any place, church, movie theater. So we got to start looking at how to keep ourselves safe. I think that's a conversation that we need to have next, because you'll never be able to stop a mass shooter. You'll never be able to prevent someone from carrying out a malice act against people. It's unfortunate, it's sad, but that is the reality. In reference to, and I will say that I know racism is a thing in this country. I'm not denying that it's not here and it's not present, because it is present. But we do have to be slow to think of everything as being race, because it does blind us to see other issues that are just equally as important, if not more important. I just challenge us all to do our research, be slow to assume, and take the time to listen for understanding and not listening simply to argue, because there is a lot of truth out here, and sometimes we can be distracted by our own biases. In reference to the Jayland Walker situation, it was extremely unacceptable in my opinion. In my personal opinion, it seemed very barbaric. And then I described it as a firing squad. I do believe that there is some validity in the action that 1 or 2 officers may have taken, but the response of the other officers were grossly excessive. With that being said, all we can control in life, I tell this all the time, is that the only power and control you have is the control over yourself. You do not have control over an officer, and you don't have control over the consequences. And with that being said, we have to be mindful, be more knowledgeable of the law, knowledgeable of our rights, and also how we can enforce said rights on officers in a situation when you're encountered by a police officer. I encourage everyone to study on it. I encourage everyone to do the research and don't fall victim to headlines. Be slow and wait and be patient for the evidence to come out. And then also be active in your communities. That's very, very important. And again, at the end of the day, you guys, the safest way to have an encounter with an officer is to comply, know your rights, understand your rights so that you know when your rights are being violated, comply to survive. That is the best option. And it is the safest option.
Listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed this as always. It's been too long, brother. We got to keep this on a regular. I know we said we was gonna look at it, but we both so busy. I'm like,
we'd be so busy. Yeah.
Just take it as love because look at the chemistry, look at the chat, look at the views. We definitely know folks are hungry for this type of content. So shout out to everyone. Yes, I'm going to switch it up because I'm a versatile YouTuber. And we're going to talk Senator Saturday. So y'all going to be like, oh no, we went from serious to lighter to this. But I am a kind of multifaceted woman, as you would get to know me. My subs are, part of my journey here. So on YouTube. So we are going to, again, what makes news and what makes me think, I definitely want to bring it here to kind of take away some lessons. And I hope that was accomplished tonight, whether you agree with Mr. Real Nathan Daley or not. We have an open space here for people to share their ideas, hopefully so that we can make progress. Hopefully we're listening to one another and we're not, as he says, listening to respond instead. But for the last minuteness of this, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Y'all continue to watch the Jayland Walker story. Continue to watch what happens to this man, Mr. Crimo, and how we see justice hopefully served. But thank you guys. It's been a wonderful night. It is about 12:30 Eastern. I cannot believe I'm still on YouTube at these hours, but I might have to come on YouTube these hours because look at the people. People's up.
More people up.
Yeah. People are listening, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to wake up and go to my trainer? But we got work to do in our community. So hopefully we've elevated your mind and opened your mind to new perspectives tonight. But appreciate everybody. Thank you to everybody that super chatted. See you Saturday. Have a great night. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing. Bye, y'all. Thank you.